Dunmere Hall stands in winter silence, its northern towers cutting through fog like accusations made permanent. Inside the grand chamber, Duke Alaric of Viramont faces the Council of Nobles alone, stripped of advisors, his authority questioned for the first time in 15 years. They want him to choose the woman who restructured his failing estates or the political machine that made him untouchable. But Alaric doesn't negotiate with men who mistake his restraint for weakness. Power isn't what you're given, it's what you refuse to surrender. Stay until the end to see how a duke dismantles opposition without raising his voice. And drop a like if you're watching from your city, because this story gets darker before it gets honest. Fun! The first crack in Alaric's world arrives on a Tuesday morning with all the ceremony of tax documents. He's standing in the eastern wing of Dunmere Hall reviewing grain distribution reports when his steward enters without knocking. Marcus has served the Viramont family for 30 years. The man doesn't interrupt unless the foundation is literally burning. So what the hell is burning now? Alaric doesn't look up from the ledger. Let Marcus sweat for 10 seconds. Establish the hierarchy before the crisis even has a name. Finally, what is it? The steward's voice comes out carefully neutral. My lord, the council has requested your presence. Immediately. Requested. Alaric catches the word like a splinter under skin. The Council of Nobles doesn't request. They summon, they demand, they mandate. Request implies negotiation, which means someone's already negotiating against him. He sets down the ledger with precision. Every movement calculated. Did they specify the matter? Marcus hesitates. That hesitation tells Alaric everything. Lady Selene Ashford, my lord. There have been complaints. Of course there have. Alaric's jaw tightens, but his expression remains carved marble. He spent 10 years in military campaigns learning to command men who wanted him dead. A room full of aristocrats in velvet doublets isn't going to rattle him now. Who filed the complaints? Lord Harrington, Lady Thorne, several others. Several. The word tastes like conspiracy. Alaric knows exactly what this is. Selene's charitable network has been outperforming the council's infrastructure reforms for 3 years straight. She's made them look incompetent without saying a single word against them. And incompetence, in aristocratic circles, is the only unforgivable sin. Tell them I'll arrive within the hour. Marcus bows and retreats. The door closes with a sound like a coffin settling. Alaric stands alone in the eastern wing, surrounded by maps of estates he inherited, wars he won, alliances he forged through calculated marriages and strategic threats. None of it was accidental. None of it was luck. He built this power structure brick by methodical brick, and now some nobleman with inherited land and purchased titles thinks he can dismantle it over a woman. Not a woman. A mind. That's the distinction that matters. Alaric met Selene Ashford 2 years ago during an estate infrastructure negotiation. Her brother had defaulted on grain contracts. The family was bleeding money and reputation in equal measure. Alaric had gone to the meeting expecting to strip assets and consolidate territory. Instead, he found her. She wasn't beautiful in the performative way court women cultivated. No elaborate gowns, no strategic décolletage, no carefully practiced vulnerability. Selene Ashford sat across from him in a plain gray dress with ledgers spread before her like battle maps and said, "You don't want our land. You want our water rights. Here's why that won't solve your northern drainage problem." Then she'd proceeded to dismantle his entire acquisition strategy with irrigation surveys and township records he didn't know existed. Alaric had dismissed his advisors halfway through, not because they were wrong, because she was more right. That meeting had lasted 6 hours. By the end, they'd restructured the agreement entirely. The Ashford family kept their estates. Alaric gained access to water distribution networks that stabilized 3 territories. Everyone profited, except it wasn't about profit. Alaric had left that negotiation with something more dangerous than land deeds. He'd left with interest, the kind of interest that doesn't fade when the contracts are signed. Over the following months, he'd found excuses to request her presence. Infrastructure reviews, tax reformation proposals, charity oversight committees, always professional, always justified, always necessary, and always utterly transparent. Because Selene wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what he was doing. She'd simply chosen to participate. Their conversations had evolved past formality into something sharper, somewhere between intellectual combat and mutual recognition. Alaric would propose a policy. Celine would identify its structural weakness. He'd adapt. She'd counter. Back and forth like a chess match played across estate governance and economic theory. His advisors had noticed. Of course they'd noticed. You don't bring the same woman to 8 consecutive council meetings without generating speculation. But speculation isn't accusation, until it is. Alaric moves through Dunmere Hall toward the council chamber with the measured pace of a man who's already won and is simply waiting for his opponents to realize it. Servants press against walls as he passes. They know that expression. It's the same one he wore before executing the grain merchant who tried to corner the market during the famine. Execution, not murder. There's a legal distinction, just like there's a distinction between influence and interference. The council chamber sits at the heart of Dunmere Hall, a circular room with vaulted ceilings and family crests embedded in stained glass. 15 noble seats arranged in judgment formation. Alaric's own seat elevated slightly. Not enough to seem tyrannical, just enough to establish primacy. When he enters, 12 of the 15 seats are occupied. Lord Harrington sits directly opposite the Duke's chair. Overweight, overdressed, overleveraged in debt he's been hiding through creative accounting. Alaric knows because he makes it his business to know every nobleman's weakness. Information is the only currency that doesn't depreciate. Lady Thorne occupies the seat to Harrington's right. Widow of a war hero, creditor to half the northern estates, vicious as a spring trap. She's wearing black even though her husband's been dead for 7 years. Mourning as aesthetic choice. The others are furniture, followers. The kind of nobility that votes whichever way power flows. Alaric takes his seat without greeting. Let them speak first. Let them show their hand. Harrington clears his throat. Your Grace, we appreciate your prompt attendance. Alaric waits. The silence stretches. It's a technique he learned in military negotiations. Never fill silence defensively. Make them earn every word. Harrington shifts in his seat. We've convened this session to discuss matters of governance oversight. Still, Alaric waits. Lady Thorne takes over, her voice like silk stretched over wire. Specifically, Your Grace, we've received concerning reports regarding Lady Celine Ashford's activities within your territories. Concerning. Alaric lets the word hang there. Define concerning. Thorne's smile doesn't reach her eyes. Lady Ashford has been operating what appears to be an unsanctioned charitable network across multiple estates. Distributing resources, organizing labor, restructuring local economies without council approval. Alaric's expression doesn't change. And this concerns you because it circumvents established governance protocols. Harrington interjects, we have systems in place for charitable distribution. Her activities undermine those systems. Translation, she's making you look ineffective. Alaric leans back slightly. Lady Ashford's network has stabilized rural economies and territories this council declared unsalvageable. She's reduced crime rates, increased agricultural output, and generated tax revenue where you projected decline. Explain to me how effectiveness undermines governance. It's not about effectiveness, Thorne says sharply. It's about authority. She operates outside proper channels. She operates within legal parameters using her own resources. Alaric's voice remains level, but something cold enters it. Unless you're prepared to argue that competence requires permission, the chamber temperature seems to drop. Harrington tries a different angle. Your Grace, we're not questioning Lady Ashford's intentions. We're questioning the appearance of impropriety. Your continued association with her, your elevation of her counsel above established advisors, it creates complications. There it is. This isn't about Celine's network, it's about Alaric's attention. About a duke showing preference to a woman with no formal title, no political machinery, nothing but intelligence and execution. In aristocratic mathematics, that's called destabilization. Alaric stands. The movement is deliberate. Everyone in the chamber tenses. Let me clarify the situation, he says quietly. Lady Ashford's network has generated more economic stability in 3 years than this council has produced in a decade. She's done so with private funding, legal methods, and measurable results. If that threatens your authority, perhaps the problem isn't her methods. Perhaps the problem is your performance. Your Grace, I can seriously do whatever serves the interests of these estates. Alaric's voice cuts through Harrington's protest like a blade through parchment. You want to discuss impropriety? Let's discuss the grain contracts you've been routing through your cousin's shipping company at 40% markup. or Lady Thorne's land acquisitions in territories she knew were scheduled for infrastructure development, or the 15 other conflicts of interest I've documented in the past fiscal year alone. The chamber goes silent. This is the moment, the fulcrum point where authority either holds or shatters. Alaric continues, his tone conversational now, deadly. You've convened this council to pressure me into distancing myself from Lady Ashford, because her competence makes your mediocrity visible. You framed it as governance oversight, when it's actually political insecurity. And you've done so assuming I value your approval more than I value results. He pauses. You've assumed incorrectly. Thorne's face has gone pale. Harrington looks like he's swallowed glass. But Alaric isn't finished. Here's what's going to happen. Lady Ashford's network will continue operating with my full support. I will integrate her economic models into formal estate policy. And this council will endorse those changes unanimously. Because if you don't, I'll release every financial irregularity, every backdoor dealing, every questionable land transaction you've all been hiding behind aristocratic courtesy for the past decade. It's not a threat. It's a statement of consequence. You're bluffing, Thorne says, but her voice wavers. Alaric smiles. It's not a pleasant expression. Test me. The silence that follows is absolute. Then Harrington does something unexpected. He laughs. It's a bitter, defeated sound. You've already made your choice, haven't you? He says. This isn't a negotiation. It never was. Alaric doesn't respond. Doesn't need to. You'll regret this. Thorne hisses. Choosing a woman over the system that built your power. I'm not choosing a woman over a system. Alaric's voice drops to something barely above a whisper. I'm choosing effectiveness over theater. If you can't distinguish between the two, you don't belong in this chamber. He turns to leave. Your Grace, Harrington calls out. One more thing. Alaric pauses at the doorway. Your sister, Lydia Ashford. She's been vocal about her concerns regarding Lady Celine's influence over you. The air in the chamber shifts. Alaric turns slowly. What did you say? Lady Lydia approached several council members privately. She believes her sister has manipulated you, compromised your judgment. She's requested we intervene for your own protection. For a long moment, Alaric says nothing. Then, where's Lydia now? At Dunmere Hall, in the guest quarters. She arrived this morning. Alaric's expression doesn't change, but something fundamental shifts in his posture. The kind of shift that happens before violence. This session is concluded, he says quietly. You'll receive formal policy documents within the week. I expect unanimous endorsement. He doesn't wait for response. The walk from the council chamber to the guest quarters takes 7 minutes. Alaric uses every second to contain the rage building behind his sternum like pressure in a sealed container. Lydia Ashford, Celine's younger sister. Beautiful in the way court values beauty. Charming in the way social climbing requires charm. Ambitious in the way people are ambitious when they mistake attention for power. Alaric had met her before Celine. Lydia had been positioned as the Ashford family's primary asset. The marriageable daughter, the strategic alliance. He'd found her exhausting. Not because she was unintelligent, because she weaponized intelligence in ways that felt performative. Every conversation calculated for maximum social advantage. Every opinion poll-tested for aristocratic approval. Celine was different. Celine didn't perform. She simply existed at full capacity and let others deal with the consequences. That's what Lydia never understood. Power isn't performance, it's presence. The guest quarters occupy the western wing. Alaric enters without knocking. Lydia sits by the window in afternoon light that makes her look ethereal. She's arranged herself perfectly. Hair positioned just so, dress chosen to suggest vulnerability without dishevelment. It's a tableau designed for maximum impact. Alaric feels nothing but cold assessment. Your Grace, Lydia stands, executing a flawless curtsy. I'm so glad you... Did you go to the council? He interrupts. She blinks, adjusts. The performance shifts gears. I was concerned. Celine has been spending so much time here, and people are talking, and I thought, did you go to the council? His voice doesn't rise, but something in it makes her step back. Yes. I thought you should know what people are saying. About her. About you both. Alaric moves further into the room. Lydia retreats until her back hits the window frame. Let me be exceptionally clear, he says quietly. Your sister has accomplished more in 3 years than your entire family has managed in 3 generations. She's restructured failing economies, stabilized rural territories, and generated measurable prosperity. While you've been cultivating social connections and strategic marriage prospects, she's been doing actual work. Lydia's eyes flash. She's manipulating you. Can't you see that? She's using her networks to make herself indispensable to you. It's calculated, Alaric. Everything she does is calculated. He laughs. It's a harsh sound. Of course it's calculated. That's what makes it effective. Calculation isn't manipulation, it's competence. Something you've always confused with deception because you can't imagine intelligence without ulterior motive. That's not fair. Fair? Alaric's voice drops to something dangerous. You went to my counsel. You attempted to undermine your own sister because she receives attention you believe you're entitled to. You framed her effectiveness as manipulation and my recognition of that effectiveness as compromise. And you did all of this under the pretense of protecting me. He steps closer. I don't need protection from competence, Lydia. I need protection from people who mistake jealousy for concern. Her face crumples. Tears well in her eyes. It's a practiced response. Alaric recognizes it because he's seen it deployed in dozens of court situations. It doesn't move him. You're in love with her, Lydia whispers. Aren't you? The question lands like a blade between ribs. Alaric goes very still. Because that's the thing, isn't it? That's the truth underneath all the political maneuvering and council machinations and aristocratic theater. He doesn't love Celine in the way court romances describe love. There are no sonnets, no grand gestures, no declarations under moonlight. But there's recognition. The kind of recognition that happens when one functional mind encounters another in a world full of decorative ones. There's respect. The kind that makes him reconsider conclusions he thought were permanent. There's desire. Not the performative kind. The dangerous kind. The kind that makes a man restructure his entire world because the alternative is losing access to the only person who genuinely challenges him. Is that love? Or is it something more ruthless? What I feel is irrelevant, Alaric says finally. What matters is results. Your sister produces results. You produce drama. That's the only distinction I care about. Lydia's tears spill over. Real ones now, he thinks. But that's irrelevant. I came here to help you, she says brokenly. To warn you before she ruins everything you've built. She hasn't ruined anything. Alaric's voice is final. She's improved everything she's touched, including me. He turns toward the door. I want you gone from Dunmere Hall by morning. You're no longer welcome here. Alaric, that's not negotiable. He leaves her standing in the window light, tears streaming down a face arranged for maximum sympathy. It doesn't matter. Performance stopped working on him years ago. The walk back to his private chambers feels longer than it should. Alaric's mind is already 3 moves ahead, calculating consequences, mapping political fallout, preparing for whatever comes next. Because Lydia won't leave quietly. Women like her never do. She'll spread rumors, cultivate sympathy, position herself as the victim of the Duke's cold rejection. The court will eat it up. But the court has always been theater. Alaric stopped caring about audience approval the moment he realized power doesn't require applause. His chambers occupy the highest tower in Dunmere Hall. Stone walls, minimal furniture, windows that overlook the northern territories he's spent 15 years consolidating. He pours himself whiskey, drinks it standing. The liquor burns but doesn't settle the restlessness building in his chest. There's a knock at the door. Enter. It's Celine. Of course it is. She's wearing the same gray dress from their first meeting, hair pulled back practically. No jewelry, no performance, just presence. I heard about the council session, she says without preamble. And Lydia. Word travels fast. Celine closes the door behind her, moves into the room with the same efficiency she brings to everything. You defended me, she says. Publicly. I defended competence, she almost smiles. Is that what you're calling it now? Alaric sets down the whiskey glass. What would you call it? Celine considers the question with the same seriousness she brings to infrastructure debates. Realignment, she says finally. You've realigned the power structure to accommodate a different kind of authority. Mine. And that bothers you. It terrifies me. The honesty cuts through every defense Alaric has constructed. She continues, moving toward the window. I didn't build my network to gain power over you. I built it because rural estates were failing and no one with actual authority was doing anything about it. The fact that you noticed, that you valued it, that you've now staked your political capital on defending it, that changes everything. Changes it how? Celine turns to face him. Because now I'm not just responsible for my network's success. I'm responsible for what happens to you because of it. Lydia will spread poison. The council will look for any opportunity to undermine you. And all of it traces back to your association with me. So you're suggesting I distance myself, protect my position. I'm suggesting you think very carefully about whether I'm worth the cost. Alaric crosses the room in 3 strides, stops close enough that Celine has to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Let me be clear about something, he says quietly. I didn't defend you to the council because I'm infatuated or compromised or manipulated. I defended you because your network outperforms their governance, because your intelligence threatens their mediocrity, because effectiveness matters more to me than political comfort. And if that costs me their approval, so be it. I've never built power on approval. I've built it on results. Celine's breathing has shifted, shallower, faster. You're risking everything, she whispers. I'm risking nothing. Alaric's hand comes up, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. So light, it's almost not contact. They're the ones at risk. Every nobleman who thought comfort was a right instead of a privilege. Every advisor who confused position with competence. They're all at risk because you've proven there's a better way to govern. And you, Celine says, her voice barely audible, what are you proving? That power doesn't diminish when it's shared with someone who can actually wield it. The silence that follows is charged with something beyond words. Then Celine does something that breaks every rule of aristocratic propriety. She kisses him. It's not tentative, not questioning. It's a claim. A statement of intent rendered physical. Alaric responds with the same ruthless precision he brings to everything. One hand sliding into her hair, the other gripping her waist, pulling her against him with enough force to communicate exactly how long he's been restraining this particular impulse. The kiss deepens, becomes something beyond strategic, beyond calculated, becomes honest. When they finally break apart, both breathing hard, Celine's composure is completely shattered. That was, she starts. Inevitable, Alaric finishes. She laughs. It's a raw sound. Nothing like the practiced social laughter he's heard from dozens of court women. This is real. Unfiltered. Dangerous. What happens now, she asks. Alaric's grip on her waist tightens. Now we stop pretending this is about infrastructure reform. And my network continues operating with my full institutional support. He pauses. But we both know that's not what you're really asking. Celine meets his eyes. No, I'm asking if you understand what you're taking on. I don't come with political advantages. My family is nearly bankrupt. My sister hates me. The council sees me as a threat. I have nothing to offer you except competence and honesty. Alaric's smile is sharp. That's everything I've ever wanted, even if it destroys you politically. Especially then, the honesty in that statement is terrifying, because they both understand what's being said underneath. This isn't romance. This is recognition. Two minds that function at the same frequency, finally acknowledging that alignment. An alignment, in their world, is more binding than any marriage contract. Celine pulls back slightly. Breathing space. Thinking space. We should be strategic about this, she says. Control the narrative before Lydia controls it for us. Alaric shakes his head. No more strategy. No more calculation. I'm done hiding competence behind political courtesy. That's reckless. That's honest. Honesty will get you killed in this court. Then we'll rebuild the court. Celine stares at him. You're serious, completely. She processes that, the full implications. The complete restructuring of aristocratic power dynamics that statement represents. Then she smiles. It's not a nice smile. It's the smile of someone who's just realized they're playing a bigger game than they thought. All right, she says quietly. Let's burn it all down and build something better. Alaric kisses her again. Harder this time. A seal on an agreement more binding than any treaty. When they separate, his voice is rough. You should leave. Before this becomes more complicated. It's already complicated. More visible then. Celine adjusts her dress, fixes her hair, returns to composure with impressive speed. Tomorrow, she says, We'll start restructuring governance models tomorrow. Tonight? Tonight I'm going to drink wine and pretend the entire aristocracy isn't about to declare war on us. They won't declare war. No? Alaric's smile is cold. They'll try to undermine us quietly. Through social pressure and political maneuvering. They'll fail. You're very confident. I'm very prepared. Celine reaches the door, pauses with her hand on the handle. Alaric. Yes. Thank you. For defending me. I didn't defend you. I recognized you. There's a difference. She leaves without responding. Alaric stands alone in his chambers, whiskey glass empty, windows showing northern territories darkening under evening sky. He's just made a choice that will fracture the entire political structure of his duchy, and he feels nothing but certainty, because power built on fear and control was always going to collapse eventually. Better to control the collapse. Better to rebuild on foundations of competence instead of inherited privilege. Better to align with the only mind that's ever genuinely challenged his. The rest is just consequence. The rest is just beginning. Outside Dunmere Hall, in guest quarters and council chambers and aristocratic estates scattered across the northern territories, conversations are happening in whispers and behind closed doors. Lydia Ashford weeping into silk pillows, already crafting the narrative of her cruel dismissal. Lord Harrington and Lady Thorne meeting in lamplight, discussing how to weaponize the Duke's attachment without openly challenging his authority. Servants and stewards passing information through invisible networks, spreading news of the confrontation, the kiss, the complete realignment of power. By morning, the entire court will know. By morning, the war will be formal. But wars aren't won in chambers and ballrooms. They're won in ledgers and infrastructure, in systems that work versus systems that merely look impressive. And Alaric has just allied himself with the only person in the duchy who understands that distinction. 3 days later, formal documents arrive at every council member's estate. The Duke's new governance structure. Celine Ashford's charitable network formally integrated into ducal authority. Her economic models now mandatory across all territories. No room for negotiation, no opportunity for refusal. Just implementation. Lord Harrington reads the documents twice, then throws them across his study. The ink is barely dry and already he can see the implications. His contracts, his arrangements, his entire financial ecosystem, all of it subordinated to systems designed by a woman with no formal title. It's humiliating. It's also completely legal. Lady Thorne's response is more measured. She calls a meeting of the most influential nobles. Not the full council, just the ones with actual power. They gather in her estate 3 days before the formal implementation deadline. 8 nobles. Enough to create pressure, not enough to constitute open rebellion. We can't challenge him directly. Thorne says without preamble, the Duke's authority is absolute within his territories, but we can make implementation impossible. How? Someone asks. By refusing cooperation at the local level. Her smile is thin. Lady Ashford's systems require coordination across estates. If we simply delay, lose documents, misunderstand directives, the system collapses under its own weight. That's sabotage. That's self-preservation. Harrington leans forward. And if the Duke retaliates? With what? Thorne's voice is cold. He can't execute us for administrative inefficiency. He can't strip our lands for bureaucratic delays. All he can do is watch his precious reform die slowly. The room falls silent. Then someone else speaks up. A younger noble. Lord Garrett. What about Lady Ashford herself? What about her? She's the system's architect. If she's discredited, the system loses legitimacy. Thorne's eyes sharpen. Go on. Garrett chooses his words carefully. Lydia Ashford has been quite vocal about her sister's methods. Perhaps those concerns should be investigated formally. Questions about fund allocation. Accusations of impropriety. Nothing provable, just enough to create doubt. You want to destroy her reputation. I want to introduce reasonable skepticism. The distinction is meaningless and everyone knows it. But it's also effective. Thorne considers the proposal. The Duke will defend her, she says finally. Of course he will. Garrett smiles. Which makes him look compromised. A Duke defending a woman under investigation. It's perfect. The meeting continues for 3 more hours. By the end, they have a strategy. Not rebellion, not open conflict. Something more insidious. Systematic erosion. Back at Dunmere Hall, Celine is drowning in implementation documents. Her network was designed to operate independently, small scale, flexible. Turning it into formal governance structure requires completely different architecture. She's been working 18-hour days for a week straight. Her eyes burn, her hands cramp from writing. But she can't stop because stopping means failure. And failure means Alaric's political capital was wasted. He finds her in the estate library at 2 in the morning, surrounded by ledgers and legal documents and cold tea. "You need to sleep," he says from the doorway. Celine doesn't look up. "I need to finish the Northern Territory integration protocols. They'll still exist in 6 hours. But will I still have the mental clarity to see the structural weaknesses?" Alaric crosses to her desk, physically removes the pen from her hand. "Celine." She finally meets his eyes. "I can't fail you." The vulnerability in that statement is staggering. Alaric pulls her to her feet. "You're not going to fail. And even if you did, it wouldn't change anything. It would change everything." Her voice cracks slightly. "You've staked your authority on my competence. If I can't deliver, then we'll find another approach." He cups her face in both hands. "I didn't align with you because you're infallible. I aligned with you because you see problems clearly and you're not afraid to restructure until solutions work. What if the council sabotages implementation? Then we document the sabotage and use it as grounds for restructuring the council itself." Celine stares at him. "You'd really do that?" Without hesitation. She leans into his touch, exhaustion making her defenses brittle. "Sometimes I think you're insane. Sometimes I am." They stand like that for a long moment. Two people holding each other up in a world designed to pull them apart. Then Celine straightens, returns to composure. "Tomorrow," she says. "I'll finish tomorrow. Tonight you sleep. Will you stay?" The question is quiet, but it carries weight. Alaric understands what she's asking. Not seduction, not performance, just presence. "Yes," he says simply. They leave the library together, walk through dark corridors to Celine's chambers. Nothing happens beyond sleep, but the intimacy of that shared vulnerability is more binding than anything physical could be. The next morning, Lydia Ashford makes her move. She spent a week cultivating sympathy. The rejected sister. The concerned family member silenced by the Duke's infatuation. The court has eaten it up exactly as predicted. Now she takes the final step. A formal complaint filed with the regional magistrate. Not about Celine directly. About fund allocation irregularities in the charitable network. Questions about where money came from, where it went, whether proper oversight existed. It's brilliant because it's not technically an accusation. It's just a request for transparency. The kind of request that sounds reasonable until you realize it requires Celine to disclose every donor, every transaction, every private arrangement she's made over 3 years. The kind of disclosure that will destroy relationships with sources who valued anonymity. The magistrate has no choice but to open an investigation. The news reaches Dunmere Hall by noon. Alaric is in a council session when Marcus enters with the formal notice. The room goes silent as he reads it. Then he sets the document down with precision, looks directly at Lord Harrington. "Did you know about this?" Harrington's face is carefully neutral. "I've heard rumors of Lady Lydia's concerns, Your Grace, but I had no knowledge of formal complaints." He's lying. Alaric knows he's lying. Everyone in the room knows he's lying, but the lie is plausible enough to hide behind. "This investigation," Alaric says quietly, "is politically motivated character assassination disguised as administrative oversight." "That may be," Lady Thorne responds smoothly, "but the magistrate is legally obligated to investigate formal complaints. Your Grace's personal feelings about Lady Ashford don't supersede legal procedure. The trap is perfect. If Alaric interferes, he looks corrupt, a duke protecting his lover above the law. If he doesn't interfere, Celine faces an investigation designed to destroy her credibility regardless of findings." The silence in the chamber is absolute. Then Alaric smiles. It's the smile he wore before executing the grain merchant. "You're absolutely right," he says pleasantly. "The magistrate should investigate thoroughly. In fact, I'll personally ensure he has access to every document, every ledger, every transaction record from Lady Ashford's network." The council members exchange glances. "And while we're discussing transparency," Alaric continues, "perhaps we should extend that same standard to all noble charitable operations. I'm sure the magistrate would be interested in reviewing the Harrington Education Fund and the Thorne Widows Relief Society. and every other aristocratic charity that's operated without oversight for the past decade. The temperature in the room drops 20 degrees. "You can't be serious," Harrington says. "I'm completely serious." Alaric's voice is steel-wrapped in silk. "If we're establishing precedent that charitable networks require magistrate investigation, let's establish it universally. I'm sure everyone's records are as transparent as Lady Ashford's. The threat is clear. Open this door and everyone's secrets come flooding out." Thorne's face has gone pale. "Your Grace, that's excessive, is it? Or is it simply equal application of legal standards?" He leans back in his chair. "I'll leave it to the council to decide. We can have selective investigation of political opponents, or we can have universal transparency. Your choice. The vote that follows is unanimous. The investigation into Celine's network will proceed, as will investigations into every other noble charitable operation. It's mutually assured destruction dressed as fairness, and Alaric has just called their bluff. The session ends in tense silence. As nobles file out, Harrington pauses at the doorway, looks back at the Duke. "You're going to lose her," he says quietly. "One way or another, this ends with you losing her." Alaric doesn't respond. Because Harrington isn't wrong. The political machinery grinding into motion now has momentum that can't be stopped. Even if the investigation clears Celine completely, the damage to her reputation will be permanent. Doubt introduced is doubt that never fully disappears. And a duke can defend competence, but he can't defend perception. Late that night, after Celine has reviewed the investigation notice and processed its implications, she finds Alaric in his chambers. "They're going to destroy me," she says without preamble. "They're going to try. It's not the same thing." She moves to the window, looks out over dark territories. Even if the investigation finds nothing, the questions will remain. Every policy I propose will be examined for hidden motive. Every decision scrutinized for personal benefit. I'll never be seen as competent again, just compromised. Then we change what competence looks like. You can't change perception through force of will. No. But I can change the systems that create perception. He joins her at the window. What if we didn't fight the investigation? What if we used it? Used it how? By making it the model for all noble accountability. Turn your transparency into the new standard. Make every other noble submit to the same scrutiny. They'll never agree to that. They already have. The council voted unanimously for universal investigation. Celine turns to face him, understanding dawning. "You're not defending me. No. You're weaponizing my situation to restructure the entire oversight system." "Yes." The silence that follows is complicated. Because that's not defense, that's ruthless strategic opportunism. And it might actually work, but it also means Celine becomes the catalyst for a complete reformation of aristocratic accountability. The test case. The example. The sacrifice. "I'm scared," she admits quietly. "I know. What if they find something? Some transaction I can't fully explain, some donor I can't name without breaking confidence. Then we deal with it. Together." Celine searches his face. "You'd really risk everything for this. Not for this. For you. There's a distinction." She kisses him then. Hard, like she's trying to convince herself this is real. When they break apart, her voice is rough. "If we're doing this, we're doing it completely. Full transparency. Every ledger, every decision, everything. Everything. No secrets? No secrets. It's a promise more binding than any they've made before. Because secrets are currency in aristocratic power, and they're about to make themselves bankrupt. The next morning, Celine delivers every document from her network to the magistrate's office personally. 3 years of records, hundreds of transactions, thousands of pages. All of it. The magistrate, a careful man named Elias Vance, stares at the mountain of documentation with something like horror. "This will take months to review," he says. Celine smiles. "I'm aware. I've also prepared an index, cross-references, and explanatory notes for complex transactions. You'll find everything in order." Vance looks at her carefully. "Lady Ashford, you understand that full transparency means I'll be examining every decision you've made, every donor relationship, every fund allocation." "I understand. And if I find irregularities, you'll report them, as is your duty." She meets his eyes. "I'm not afraid of scrutiny, Magistrate Vance. I'm afraid of systems that don't require it." It's a statement designed to be quoted, and it will be. By evening, word has spread through the court. Celine Ashford has submitted to full voluntary investigation, complete transparency, no resistance. It makes her look either supremely confident or completely insane. The other nobles are panicking because now they can't refuse investigation without looking guilty. Harrington receives his summons 3 days later. All financial records from the education fund. He stares at the notice for 20 minutes before calling his accountant. The conversation that follows is not pleasant. Lady Thorne's investigation request arrives the same afternoon. She reads it twice. Then she pours herself brandy and contemplates exactly how much trouble she's in. Because the Widows' Relief Society has been her personal slush fund for 7 years. Every transaction perfectly legal. Every allocation technically justified. And absolutely none of it defensible under genuine scrutiny. Within a week, 6 nobles have quietly withdrawn their charitable operations entirely, rather than face investigation. Alaric notes each withdrawal in a private ledger. Evidence of guilt through evasion. Ammunition for later. The court is fracturing along new lines now. Not noble versus common, but transparent versus corrupt. And Celine, willingly subjected to the most invasive investigation, is becoming the symbol of the former. It's brilliant. It's also incredibly dangerous. Because Magistrate Vance is thorough, and even legitimate operations have moments that look questionable under microscopic examination. 2 weeks into the investigation, he finds one. A donation from an anonymous source. 50,000 marks, allocated to rural infrastructure in a territory that just happened to neighbor Alaric's personal estates. The timing is suspicious. The amount is significant. The anonymity is questionable. Vance requests an explanation. Celine provides documentation showing the infrastructure project was planned 6 months before the donation, shows economic impact reports, shows community benefit analysis. But she can't name the donor without breaking confidence. And unnamed donors look like bribes. The finding isn't technically criminal, but it's politically devastating. News spreads through court like wildfire. Celine Ashford accepted anonymous funds for projects benefiting the Duke's territories. The implication is clear. Corruption. Quid pro quo. Personal benefit disguised as charity. It doesn't matter that the project legitimately helped rural communities. It doesn't matter that the timeline doesn't support bribery accusations. Perception is reality, and the perception is compromised. Alaric learns about the finding during a council session, watches Harrington smile, sees Thorne's satisfaction, understands exactly what's happening. They've won, not through evidence, through implication. The session ends early. Alaric returns to his chambers and finds Celine already there. She's standing at the window, not moving, just standing. "The donor was my mother," she says without turning. Before she died, she liquidated personal assets to fund the network. Made the donation anonymous because she didn't want the family name attached to charity. Thought it would seem like we were buying social redemption. So tell Vance. "I can't." She finally turns. Mother's will specifically prohibited linking her estate to the network. Legal binding. If I reveal the source, I violate her final wishes. And the family loses what little inheritance remains. The trap is perfect. Defend yourself and betray your mother's trust, or accept the implication of corruption. There's no good option. Alaric crosses to her. "We'll find another way." "There is no other way." Celine's voice is flat. "The finding stands. My credibility is destroyed, and your association with me becomes political suicide." She takes a breath. "You need to distance yourself." "No." "Alaric, no." His voice is final. Celine stares at him. "They're going to use this to destroy you. Let them try. You're being irrational." "I'm being honest." He grips her shoulders. "I told you I wasn't choosing you because you're perfect. I'm choosing you because you see clearly and you execute effectively. That hasn't changed. My judgment is now legally questioned by a finding that's technically inconclusive. There's a difference between suspicious and criminal. The court won't care about the difference. Then fuck the court." The profanity lands like a physical blow, because Alaric never swears, never loses composure, never lets emotion override calculation. Until now. "You've spent 15 years building political capital," Celine says desperately. "You've fought wars, negotiated treaties, consolidated territories. You've built an empire on strategic precision, and you're going to throw it all away over one finding in an investigation designed to destroy me?" "Yes." The single word contains absolute certainty. Why? Celine whispers. Alaric's hands slide from her shoulders to her face. Because power built on compromise with mediocrity was never worth protecting. Because I've spent 15 years maintaining systems I don't believe in for the sake of stability. Because you're the first person who's ever made me want to build something different. He kisses her, not gently, like he's trying to transfer conviction through contact. When they break apart, Celine is crying. I'm going to ruin you, she says brokenly. Then we'll be ruined together. That's not romantic. That's insane. Maybe. His smile is sharp. But I'd rather be ruined with you than successful with them. The council will revolt. Let them. They'll strip your authority. They'll try. Alaric, enough! His voice cuts through her protest. We're not debating this. Tomorrow I'm releasing a formal statement supporting you completely, affirming the legitimacy of your network, and announcing full integration of your systems into ducal governance regardless of investigation findings. That's political suicide. That's leadership. Celine searches his face, looking for doubt, for calculation. For any sign this is strategy instead of sincerity. She finds nothing but absolute commitment. You're serious, completely. She laughs. It's a broken sound. Then I guess we're both insane, apparently. They spend the night planning, not defense, restructuring. Because if they're going to burn the existing system, they need something to build in its place. By morning, they have a framework. Not perfect, but functional. And that's all they've ever needed. The formal statement releases at noon the next day. Duke Alaric of Virmont announces complete confidence in Lady Celine Ashford's charitable network, affirms her competence, dismisses investigation findings as politically motivated character assassination, and declares that effective immediately, all noble charitable operations will be subordinated to unified oversight under Lady Ashford's direction. The court explodes. Harrington calls for emergency council session. Thorne demands the Duke submit to mental competency review. 6 nobles threaten to withdraw from the duchy entirely. It's chaos. Exactly as predicted. And in the middle of that chaos, Alaric makes one more move. He proposes to Celine, not romantically, strategically. Marriage as institutional alliance, making her position legally unassailable. Celine stares at the ring, simple, functional, no romantic pretense, and understands exactly what he's offering. Not love, partnership. The kind of partnership that restructures power itself. She accepts. The announcement comes 3 hours after the governance statement. The timing is deliberate, overwhelming the court's capacity for outrage, creating too many fires to fight simultaneously. By evening, the duchy is in complete political meltdown, and Alaric stands in his chambers with Celine beside him, watching the chaos unfold like a controlled burn. This is it, she says quietly. The point where we either succeed completely or fail absolutely. Yes. No middle ground. Never was. She leans against him. I hope you know what you're doing. Alaric's arm wraps around her waist. I don't. That's not reassuring. It's honest. They stand like that as the sun sets over territories about to fracture into civil war or revolutionary reform. And neither of them looks away. Because whatever comes next, they're facing it together. 2 minds aligned against a system designed to keep them separate. The most dangerous kind of opposition. The only kind that ever actually changes anything. The morning after the engagement announcement, Dunmere Hall feels like a castle under siege, even though no army has arrived. Alaric wakes before dawn out of habit more than necessity. Military campaigns taught him that the hours before sunrise belong to strategists and assassins. He's been both. Celine is already awake beside him. Not unusual. She sleeps like someone expecting attack. 3 hours maximum, then her mind activates and won't shut down again. They haven't consummated anything, not yet. The engagement is political architecture, not romantic theater. Sex would complicate the clarity they both need right now, though the restraint is becoming physically painful. How bad is it? Celine asks without opening her eyes. Alaric has been reading dispatches since 4 in the morning. Reports from estate managers, advisors, intelligence networks he maintains outside official channels. 6 nobles have formally requested release from ducal authority. 12 more are threatening financial withdrawal. The Northern Grain Consortium is suspending contracts pending review of governance stability. Celine finally opens her eyes. Translation. They're trying to starve you into submission. essentially. Will it work? No, but it'll hurt. She sits up, hair disheveled, face bare of cosmetics, wearing one of his shirts because her own clothing is still in guest quarters she hasn't occupied in 3 days. She looks nothing like aristocratic presentation demands. She looks real. What's our counter move, she asks. Alaric sets down the dispatches. We don't counter. We accelerate. Meaning, we formalize the governance restructuring today. Full implementation. No transition period. Force them to choose between adapting or collapsing. That's aggressive. That's necessary. He stands, begins dressing. The moment we show hesitation, they'll interpret it as weakness. We need to move with enough velocity that opposition can't organize. Celine watches him with the expression she gets when calculating complex systems. You're not just restructuring governance, she says slowly. You're restructuring power itself. Yes, by making competence the only currency that matters. Exactly. She's quiet for a moment. Then, that's going to get us killed. Probably. You're very calm about that. Alaric finishes buttoning his shirt, turns to face her. I've been preparing for this my entire life. Every war council, every negotiation, every political maneuver. It's all been training for the moment when the system itself becomes the enemy. And you think we can win? I think we can't afford to lose. The distinction matters. This isn't about victory. It's about survival of a different kind of order. There's a knock at the door. Marcus enters without waiting for permission. The man looks like he hasn't slept. Your Grace, the Council is demanding emergency session within the hour. Lord Harrington has drafted a formal censure motion. On what grounds? Abuse of ducal authority, endangerment of estate stability, mental unfitness due to emotional compromise. Alaric almost laughs. They're claiming I'm insane for choosing competence over corruption. They're claiming you're compromised by personal attachment. Marcus's voice is carefully neutral. The distinction matters legally. Let them claim whatever they want. Alaric's tone sharpens. Tell the council I'll attend their session, and I'll be bringing comprehensive documentation of every financial irregularity they've committed in the past decade. Your Grace, that's mutually assured destruction. I'm aware. He meets Marcus's eyes. Make sure they're aware, too. Marcus bows and retreats. Celine is already out of bed, moving toward her own clothing. You're really going to do it, she says. Release everything. If they force the issue, they'll force it. Harrington's too invested now. Thorne too. They can't back down without looking weak. Then they'll look criminal instead. Celine pauses, half-dressed. Alaric, if you release that documentation, you won't just destroy them. You'll destabilize the entire northern aristocracy. Trade networks will collapse. Political alliances will fracture. People will suffer. Yes. And you're comfortable with that? No. His voice is flat. But I'm willing to accept it. The honesty is brutal. Because that's the calculation, isn't it? How much collateral damage is acceptable in service of systemic change? How many people can you hurt in pursuit of a better structure? There's no good answer. Only necessity. Celine finishes dressing in silence. Then, I need to be at that council session. Absolutely not. Why? Because they'll use your presence as evidence of manipulation. Proof that I'm acting under your influence rather than independent judgment. So you're protecting me. I'm protecting the strategy. She crosses to him. Stands close enough that he can smell lavender soap and something sharper underneath. Fear, maybe. Or determination. Listen to me very carefully, she says quietly. If you walk into that chamber alone, they will frame you as a duke corrupted by sexual obsession. A man who threw away stability for a woman. That narrative destroys everything we're trying to build. And if you're there beside me, then I'm not the temptress. I'm the partner, the co-architect. The proof that this restructuring is about systems, not seduction. Alaric considers the logic, hates that she's right. They'll eviscerate you. Let them try. Her confidence is either courage or delusion. He's not sure which. Fine, he says finally. But you don't speak unless directly addressed. We can't give them ammunition. Celine's smile is sharp. I've been navigating aristocratic politics since I was 12. I know how to be strategically silent. An hour later, they enter the council chamber together. The reaction is immediate. Shock. Outrage. Harrington half rises from his seat like he's been personally insulted. Lady Thorne's face goes carefully blank. That's more dangerous than anger. Blank means calculation. Your Grace, Harrington's voice shakes slightly. This is highly irregular. Council sessions are restricted to nobility with formal standing. Lady Ashford is my betrothed. She has standing, not yet formalized. The marriage hasn't been sanctioned. It will be. Alaric takes his seat. Celine remains standing slightly behind and to his left, a position that suggests support without subordination. This session was called to discuss governance restructuring. Lady Ashford designed those systems. Her presence is relevant. Lady Thorne leans forward. Your Grace, perhaps we should discuss the circumstances surrounding this sudden engagement. The timing seems convenient given the ongoing investigation. The investigation found one inconclusive transaction, not criminal activity, but suspicious enough to warrant questions about Lady Ashford's judgment, and by extension, yours. Alaric's expression doesn't change. If we're questioning judgment based on inconclusive findings, we should question everyone's. Should we discuss the Harrington Education Fund's missing audit reports? Or perhaps Lady Thorne's land acquisitions made 3 days before public infrastructure announcements? The chamber goes silent. Harrington's face reddens. Those are completely unrelated matters. Are they? Or are they examples of the same aristocratic privilege that allows selective scrutiny? He pauses. You want to investigate Lady Ashford's network while protecting your own operations from identical examination. That's not governance. That's hypocrisy. We're not discussing our operations, Thorne snaps. We're discussing your fitness to rule. Then let's discuss it properly. Alaric pulls a document from his jacket. This is a comprehensive analysis of estate performance over the past 3 years. Territories operating under Lady Ashford's systems show 23% increase in economic stability, 15% reduction in crime, and measurable improvement in agricultural output. He slides the document across the table. Compare that to territories under traditional council governance, stagnant growth, increasing unrest, declining productivity. The data is unambiguous. Her systems work. Yours don't. Lord Garrett, the younger noble who suggested investigating Celine weeks ago, speaks up. Your Grace, effectiveness isn't the only measure of legitimacy. Process matters. Tradition matters. Why? The question lands like a blade. Garrett blinks. But tradition provides stability. Tradition provides comfort. Alaric's voice cuts through the chamber. It allows mediocrity to hide behind precedent. It protects incompetence by claiming historical validity, but it doesn't generate results. So you're suggesting we abandon all traditional governance structures. I'm suggesting we abandon structures that don't function. Tradition that serves purpose deserves preservation. Tradition that serves only itself deserves extinction. The silence that follows is absolute. Then Harrington plays his final card. Your Grace, he says carefully, we've prepared a formal motion of censure. It requires council vote, but not your approval. If passed, it strips certain ducal authorities pending review of mental competency. Alaric doesn't react, doesn't tense, doesn't show any emotion at all. Because he was expecting this. On what grounds? Emotional compromise, erratic decision-making, prioritization of personal attachment over estate welfare. Define erratic. This engagement, the sudden governance restructuring, your defense of Lady Ashford despite investigative findings, your threats against council members who question your judgment, those aren't erratic decisions. They're strategic ones you disagree with. The disagreement of 15 council members suggests the problem isn't our perspective. It's yours. Alaric stands slowly. The movement draws every eye. Let me be absolutely clear about something, he says quietly. I don't require your agreement. I don't need your approval. And I certainly don't answer to a council that mistakes tradition for authority. He pulls another document from his jacket, thicker this time. This contains detailed evidence of financial corruption, illegal land acquisition, contract manipulation, and about 40 other violations committed by members of this council over the past decade. If you proceed with your censure motion, I will release this documentation publicly. Every transaction, every backdoor deal, every compromised decision. You're bluffing, Thorne says, but her voice wavers. Test me. Harrington's face has gone pale. Your Grace, you can't seriously... I'm completely serious. You want to question my fitness to rule? Let's question everyone's fitness. starting with nobles who've been embezzling from their own charitable operations for years. The chamber erupts, accusations fly, denials clash with threats. Three nobles start shouting simultaneously, and through it all, Alaric stands perfectly still, waiting. Finally, Harrington raises his hand for silence. "Your Grace," he says carefully, "perhaps we've been hasty. Perhaps the censure motion was intended to protect estate stability, not to escalate conflict." Alaric waits. "If you're willing to postpone the governance restructuring, allow for proper transition, we could withdraw the motion." "No." The word drops like an execution order. Harrington stares. "I'm sorry?" "I said no." Alaric's voice is absolute. "The restructuring proceeds today. Full implementation. No delays. You'll endorse it unanimously or face public exposure of every crime you've committed. That's extortion. That's negotiation. You have 1 hour to decide." He turns toward the door. Celine follows without a word. Behind them, the council chamber descends into chaos. They make it halfway down the corridor before Celine speaks. "You just declared war on the entire aristocratic structure." "Yes." "They'll never forgive this. I don't need forgiveness. I need compliance." They reach his private study. Alaric closes the door, locks it, then leans against the wood like he's holding back physical force. Celine watches him carefully. "You're shaking. Adrenaline. Or fear. Both." The admission cost him something. Because this is the moment. The point where strategy becomes survival. Where calculated risk becomes genuine uncertainty. He just threatened the foundation of his own power. The council that legitimizes his authority. The nobles who control territory and resources. If they call his bluff. If they refuse and he actually releases that documentation, the duchy collapses. Civil war becomes inevitable, and Alaric will be responsible for every death that follows. "Talk to me," Celine says quietly. "What are you thinking? That I might have just destroyed everything my family built over 300 years. For what? For a system that actually functions." She crosses to him, places both hands on his chest, feel his heartbeat racing under her palms. "You did the right thing," she says. "Did I? Or did I just commit aristocratic suicide out of pride?" "Those aren't mutually exclusive." He laughs. It's a broken sound. "You're supposed to reassure me. I'm supposed to be honest with you." Her eyes search his face. "You made a choice. Maybe it destroys you. Maybe it revolutionizes governance. We won't know until the council votes. And if they refuse, then we deal with the consequences. Civil war, economic collapse, thousands of deaths." Celine doesn't flinch. Yes, the weight of that single word is staggering, because she's not minimizing, not pretending the stakes are anything less than catastrophic. She's simply standing beside him regardless. "Why?" Alaric asks. "Why are you still here? You could walk away, claim coercion, save yourself, and miss watching you burn the world down for the sake of competence." She smiles. "Not a chance." He kisses her then, hard, desperate, like he's trying to anchor himself to something solid while everything else fractures. When they break apart, both breathing hard, Celine's composure is completely shattered. "If we survive this," she says roughly, "I want everything. Define everything. You, me. Actual partnership. Not political arrangement, not strategic alliance. Real. That's dangerous, I know. Romantic attachment compromises judgment. Maybe, or maybe it sharpens it." She grips his jacket. "I've spent 3 years building systems in isolation, never trusting anyone, never relying on support, and I've accomplished a lot. But I've also been alone." "You're not alone anymore." "No, and neither are you." The honesty in that exchange is more binding than any marriage vow. A knock at the door interrupts them. Marcus's voice. "Your Grace, the council has reached a decision." Alaric and Celine separate, return to composure with practiced speed. "Time," Alaric says, 53 minutes. Fast. Too fast for genuine deliberation, which means they already knew how they'd vote. Alaric opens the door. "What's the decision?" Marcus's expression is carefully neutral. They've agreed to endorse the restructuring, unanimously, with one condition. Of course there's a condition. What condition? Lady Ashford must submit to continued oversight. Quarterly reviews of all network operations. Full transparency? Permanent. It's a compromise designed to save face. Let the council claim they're maintaining accountability while actually surrendering authority. Alaric looks at Celine. Your call. She considers it. Quarterly reviews mean ongoing scrutiny. Every decision examined. Every allocation questioned. It's also exactly what she proposed weeks ago. Universal transparency. They're trying to make my own standard into a punishment, she says. Will it work? Only if I'm actually hiding something. And you're not. No. Then it's not a punishment, it's validation. Celine's smile is sharp. Agreed. Alaric turns back to Marcus. Accepted. Draft the formal documents. Marcus bows and retreats. The door closes. Silence settles. We won, Celine says quietly. We survived the first battle. Alaric's voice is flat. The war hasn't even started. Because he's right. The council surrendered today out of fear, not conviction. The moment that fear diminishes, opposition will resurface. Restructuring aristocratic power isn't a single confrontation. It's continuous conflict. And they just made themselves permanent targets. 3 days later, the formal governance restructuring is implemented across all ducal territories. Celine's systems become official policy. Her oversight network integrated into estate management. Her economic models mandatory. The aristocracy complies. Publicly. But resistance takes other forms. Administrative delays. Lost documentation. Misunderstood directives. Small acts of sabotage that individually seem like incompetence but collectively amount to systematic obstruction. Exactly as Lady Thorne predicted weeks ago. Celine spends 18-hour days troubleshooting implementation failures. Every territory reports different problems. Supply chain disruptions, labor disputes, accounting errors. None of it provable as intentional, all of it devastatingly effective. By the end of the first week, agricultural output has declined 7%. By the second week, 12%. The systems that worked perfectly under voluntary adoption are failing under mandatory implementation. Not because the systems are flawed, because they're being sabotaged. But proving sabotage requires evidence, and everyone involved is too careful to leave evidence. Alaric finds Celine in the estate library at midnight, surrounded by failure reports and revised projections. She looks exhausted, beyond exhausted, broken. It's not working, she says without preamble. The systems are sound. The systems require cooperation. We don't have cooperation. We have malicious compliance. Alaric sits across from her. Define malicious compliance. Following orders precisely while ensuring failure. She pushes a report toward him. The northern grain distribution. We mandated new routing to reduce transportation costs. Estate managers are routing grain through the specified channels, but they're not coordinating timing. So grain arrives before storage is prepared. Spoilage rates have tripled. They're doing exactly what we ordered, while engineering exactly the outcome we're trying to prevent. Alaric reads the report. The pattern is clear once you see it. Technical obedience. Practical sabotage. How do we counter it? Celine's laugh is bitter. We can't, not without replacing every estate manager simultaneously. And we don't have the personnel, so we're trapped. We're drowning. She meets his eyes. The council is waiting for this. They knew implementation would fail, knew we'd be forced to either abandon restructuring or watch economic collapse. It's a perfect trap. And we walked right into it. The silence that follows tastes like defeat. Then Alaric says, "What if we don't try to fix the sabotage?" Celine stares at him. Explain. What if we let it fail? Publicly. Catastrophically. Let every act of sabotage become visible. You want to accelerate the collapse. I want to document it. Prove interference. Create evidence. That'll take weeks. Maybe months. In the meantime, people starve. Yes. His voice is flat. That's the cost. Celine recoils. You're talking about using civilian suffering as political ammunition. I'm talking about exposing corruption through its consequences. There's a difference. Not to the people who suffer. No, not to them. The moral weight of that admission is crushing, because this is the calculus of power, isn't it? How much harm is acceptable in service of greater good? How many people can you sacrifice to save the system? There's no clean answer. Only terrible choices. I can't do that, Celine says finally. I can't build systems designed to help people and then deliberately let those systems fail for political advantage. Then we lose. Maybe losing is better than becoming the thing we're fighting against. Alaric stands abruptly, paces to the window, stands with his back to her. You think I want this? He says quietly. You think I enjoy calculating acceptable casualties? I think you're very good at it. Because I have to be. His voice hardens. Because every decision I make as Duke involves someone suffering. Tax policy hurts merchants while funding infrastructure. Military deployment protects borders while getting soldiers killed. Governance is arithmetic written in blood. That doesn't make it right. It makes it necessary. Celine rises, crosses to him, forces him to turn and face her. Listen to me, she says. I understand necessity. I understand sacrifice. But there's a line between accepting casualties and engineering them. If we deliberately let people starve to prove political points, we're not better than the council. We're worse, because we know better. So what's your alternative? I don't have one. Her voice breaks. I just know I can't be part of that calculation. The confession costs her everything, because she's admitting strategic defeat, acknowledging that her moral framework can't accommodate the ruthlessness survival requires. And Alaric realizes something devastating. He can make this choice, can engineer the collapse, document the sabotage, destroy the council through their own corruption made visible. But if he does, he loses Celine. Not physically, she wouldn't abandon him, but something fundamental would break between them. The partnership would survive, the trust wouldn't. So he's facing a different calculation now. Victory through methods that destroy the person he's fighting alongside. Or defeat that preserves the relationship but surrenders systemic change. There's no good answer. Only impossible choices. I need to think, he says finally. How long? I don't know. Celine nods slowly. Then, I'll be in the Eastern Wing. Whenever you decide. She leaves without touching him. Alaric stands alone in the library, surrounded by reports of failing systems and civilian suffering and political sabotage. Outside the window, Dunmere Hall spreads across northern territories like a physical manifestation of authority. 300 years of consolidated power. 15 years of his own strategic construction. All of it built on calculations exactly like the one he's facing now. How much suffering is acceptable? Who deserves sacrifice? What cost justifies the outcome? He's made these decisions dozens of times before. Hundreds. Always chose effectiveness over sentiment. Results over mercy. It worked. It built an empire. And it's made him into exactly the kind of ruler he despises. Someone who sees people as variables in equations. Someone who can justify anything if the arithmetic balances. Celine is right. That line exists, and he's been crossing it for years without noticing. The realization is devastating, because if he can't make ruthless calculations anymore, what kind of duke is he? What kind of leader? Maybe the kind who deserves to lose. 2 hours later, Alaric finds Celine in the Eastern Wing. She's not sleeping, just sitting in darkness by the window. He sits beside her without speaking. Finally, I can't do it, he says. Can't engineer civilian suffering for political advantage. You're right. There's a line. Even if it means we lose. Even then. Celine exhales slowly. So what do? We find another way. Something that doesn't require people starving. And if there is no other way, then we fail with integrity instead of succeeding through atrocity. The conviction in his voice is absolute. Celine takes his hand, squeezes it. Thank you. For what? For choosing humanity over victory. They sit like that for a long time. Two people holding each other's hands in darkness while everything they've built collapses around them. It should feel like defeat. Instead, it feels like the first honest thing they've done in weeks. The next morning brings unexpected salvation from an impossible source. A delegation arrives at Dunmere Hall just after dawn. 23 estate managers from territories operating under Celine's systems. Not nobles. Working administrators. The people actually implementing policy. They request audience with the Duke. Alaric receives them in the Great Hall. Celine stands beside him. They're past pretending she's not integral to governance. The delegation's spokesman is a man named Thomas Barrow, 50 years old, 20 years managing agricultural distribution in the Western Territories. He looks exhausted. Your Grace, he begins, we're here because the current situation is unsustainable. I'm aware. With respect, I don't think you are. Barrow's voice is careful but firm. The sabotage isn't coming from estate managers. It's coming from noble overseers. Lords who've been instructed to ensure implementation failure. We suspected. Suspicion isn't evidence. Barrow pulls documents from his jacket. This is evidence, coordination records, written orders directing us to implement Lady Ashford's systems incorrectly. Documentation of deliberate supply chain disruption. Alaric takes the papers, reads them carefully. It's all there. Proof of systematic sabotage. Orders traceable directly to council members. Why are you bringing this to me? Alaric asks. Why not just comply with your lord's instructions? Because Lady Ashford's systems work, Barrow says simply. We've seen the results in territories where they were implemented properly. Reduced waste, increased efficiency, measurable improvement. And you're willing to defy noble authority to preserve those systems. We're willing to defy corrupt authority to preserve effective governance. He pauses. With your permission, Your Grace, we'd like to implement the restructuring correctly, without noble interference. You're proposing to bypass the aristocracy entirely. We're proposing to do our jobs without sabotage. Alaric looks at Celine as she is. She's staring at Barrow like he's offered salvation, because that's exactly what this is. A third option, not ruthless calculation, not strategic defeat, but grassroots support bypassing corrupt oversight entirely. What do you need? Alaric asks. Direct authority. Remove noble overseers from operational decisions. Let administrators answer to you and Lady Ashford directly. That's revolutionary. That's functional. The silence that follows is absolute. Then Alaric says, granted, the word changes everything, because he's just stripped noble intermediaries from governance structure, made competence the only qualification for authority. It's exactly the systemic change he's been fighting for. And it came from below, not above. From people who actually do the work rather than those who claim authority over it. Barrow bows. Thank you, Your Grace. Don't thank me yet. This makes you all targets. The nobility will retaliate. Let them. Barrow's voice is steel. We're done watching corruption disguise itself as tradition. The delegation leaves. Alaric and Celine stand alone in the great hall. That just happened, Celine says quietly. Yes, we have administrative support, grassroots legitimacy, and we've just declared war on every noble in the duchy. She turns to face him. Are you scared, terrified? Good. Me too. They're quiet for a moment. Then Celine says, we need to move fast. Formalize the administrative authority before the council can organize opposition. Agreed. Alaric's mind is already calculating. Documents drafted within hours. Implementation by end of day. No warning. No negotiation. The council will lose their minds. The council has already lost. They just don't know it yet, because that's the thing about power built on competence versus power built on inheritance. One requires constant maintenance. The other just requires actual work. And the people doing actual work have just chosen sides. The documents are drafted by noon. Formal transfer of operational authority from noble overseers to administrative managers. Effective immediately. Alaric signs them personally. Celine countersigns as official governance architect. By evening, copies have been distributed to every territory. The reaction is exactly what they predicted. Outrage. Threats. 3 nobles attempt to physically prevent managers from assuming authority. All 3 are removed from their positions by ducal decree. By midnight, the duchy has completely restructured. Not through compromise, not through negotiation, through direct action supported by people who actually make systems function. It's revolutionary. It's also incredibly unstable, because the nobility won't accept this quietly. 2 days later, Lord Harrington and Lady Thorne request formal audience. Not with the council, just the 2 of them. Alaric receives them in his private study. Celine is present. They're past pretending otherwise. Harrington looks like he's aged 10 years. Thorne's composure is cracked around the edges. Your Grace, Harrington begins. We need to discuss the current situation. There's nothing to discuss. The restructuring is complete. You've stripped nobility of governance authority. Thorne's voice shakes slightly. Do you understand what you've done? You've destroyed 300 years of social structure. I've removed incompetence from decision-making. The social structure will adapt. Adapt? Harrington's laugh is bitter. Your Grace, you've made enemies of every noble house in the region. They're already discussing collective action. Let them discuss. Alaric's voice is flat. I have administrative support, grassroots legitimacy, and documented evidence of aristocratic corruption. What do they have? Land, resources, private armies, which require funding. They can't access if administrators refuse cooperation. You can't seriously believe the common administrators will maintain loyalty if nobles apply pressure. I believe they'll maintain loyalty to systems that actually work. He pauses. Your mistake is thinking authority flows from position. It doesn't. It flows from effectiveness. Thorn leans forward. We're not here to debate philosophy, Your Grace. We're here to offer compromise. I'm listening. Restore noble oversight, limited, advisory. We'll accept subordination to administrative authority if you preserve our formal positions. Why would I accept that? Because the alternative is civil war. Harrington's voice drops. Nobles won't surrender power peacefully. They'll fight. And when they fight, civilians die. Is that a threat? It's a reality. Alaric stands, moves to the window, looks out over territories he's spent 15 years consolidating. Behind him, Celine speaks for the first time. Lord Harrington, Lady Thorne, let me ask you something. In 3 years operating my network, how many civilians died due to my decisions? They don't answer. None, Celine continues. Because I designed systems to preserve life, not consolidate power. Compare that to aristocratic governance. How many civilians died in the past 3 years due to economic policy designed to protect noble privilege? Still silence. The death toll isn't comparable. Her voice is quiet but absolute. You're threatening civil war because you've lost authority. But the truth is, more people will die if you regain power than if you don't. That's not philosophy, that's arithmetic. Thorne's face has gone pale, because Celine just reduced their entire position to numbers, and the numbers don't favor them. Your offer is rejected, Alaric says without turning. Noble oversight remains stripped. Administrative authority stands. If you want civil war, you'll have it. But you'll lose. You can't know that. I can. Because war requires supply chains, logistics, functional infrastructure, all controlled by administrators who've chosen effectiveness over tradition. He finally turns. You have land and legacy. I have everyone who actually makes things work. Harrington and Thorne exchange glances. Then Thorne plays her final card. What about legitimacy? She says quietly. Ducal authority derives from noble consensus. If the aristocracy collectively withdraws support, your position becomes legally questionable. Then I'll rule without legal legitimacy. That's tyranny. No, that's pragmatism. Legitimacy based on aristocratic approval is just corruption with formal documentation. I'd rather be an effective tyrant than a legitimate failure. The honesty is staggering, because Alaric just admitted he'll abandon legal framework entirely if necessary. We'll rule through direct force rather than surrender systemic change. It's the ultimate ruthless calculation, and it terrifies everyone in the room, including Celine. You've changed, Thorne whispers. The Duke who came to power 15 years ago would never have said that. The Duke who came to power 15 years ago hadn't met someone who made him want better systems. Alaric's eyes find Celine. I've spent 15 years maintaining structures I didn't believe in. I'm done. So you'll burn everything down, if necessary. Harrington stands abruptly. Then you've made your choice, and we've made ours. They leave without further words. The door closes. Silence settles like ash. Finally, Celine speaks. You meant that? About ruling without legitimacy? Yes, that's dictatorship. That's honest governance. He turns to face her. Every duke in history has ruled through force disguised as legitimacy. I'm just removing the disguise. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it functional. Celine stares at him, something shifting in her expression. You're willing to become the thing you hate to build the thing you believe in, if necessary. And when do you stop? Stop what? Compromising principles for outcomes. At what point does the end stop justifying the means? The question cuts to bone. Because she's right. Again, there's always another compromise, another ruthless calculation, another line crossed for greater good. At some point, the accumulated compromises transform you into exactly the monster you started fighting. I don't know, Alaric admits. I don't know where that line is. Then we're in trouble, because someone needs to know. They stand in silence. Two people recognizing they're descending a slope without clear bottom, but also recognizing they're descending together, which makes it either tragedy or partnership, maybe both. A week passes in tense stalemate. The nobility doesn't openly rebel, but cooperation ceases entirely. Social events exclude ducal presence. Trade agreements stall. Informal power networks freeze the duke out of aristocratic society. Its isolation disguised as propriety. Meanwhile, administrative governance functions smoothly. Supply chains stabilize. Economic output increases. Civilian satisfaction rises measurably. The systems work. But political legitimacy erodes daily, and legitimacy matters, even in dictatorships, even when ruling through direct authority, because humans need to believe power is justified somehow, need narrative that makes authority comprehensible. Without that narrative, governance becomes naked force, and naked force generates resistance. Celine sees it first. She's reviewing civilian sentiment reports when the pattern emerges. Satisfaction with governance is high, but trust in authority is declining. People like the results, but they're unsettled by methods. She brings the data to Alaric late one evening. "We have a problem," she says without preamble. "Define problem. We've won the practical war. Systems function. People's lives improve. But we're losing the narrative war. The story people tell themselves about authority." He reads the reports carefully. Sees what she sees. They think we're tyrants. Effective tyrants. But yes, is that inaccurate? Celine sits across from him. Depends on your definition of tyranny. Are we ruling without aristocratic consent? Yes. Are we forcing systemic change over objections? Yes. Are we improving lives in the process? Also yes. So we're benevolent dictators. Dictators who believe competence justifies authority. The silence that follows tastes like realization, because that's exactly what they've become. Leaders who rule through effectiveness rather than legitimacy, who justify force through results. It works. Until it doesn't. Until effectiveness declines and all that remains is force. "What do we do?" Alaric asks. "I don't know." She sounds exhausted. "I've spent 3 years believing that functional systems would generate their own legitimacy, that competence would speak for itself. It doesn't. No. People need stories. Need to believe authority serves something beyond itself. And we can't provide that story because we don't believe it ourselves." Celine meets his eyes. "No. We believe governance should serve effectiveness, but most people don't think that way. They think authority should serve tradition, or divine right, or popular will, or something transcendent. We just think it should work." Yes. That's not enough. Apparently not. They sit in shared recognition of a problem without solution. Because you can't manufacture legitimacy through force, can't impose narrative at gunpoint. Either people believe in your authority or they don't. And increasingly, they don't. 3 days later, the situation deteriorates catastrophically. A merchant convoy is attacked on the northern road, not by bandits, by nobles' private forces. 16 administrators killed, supply shipments burned, a message left pinned to a corpse. Competence without legitimacy is just tyranny with better bookkeeping. The news reaches Dunmere Hall at dawn. Alaric reads the report in absolute silence. Then he issues orders that change everything. Military deployment, full mobilization, hunt down everyone involved in the attack. No trials, no legal process. Summary execution. The orders go out within the hour. Celine learns about them when Marcus arrives at her chambers looking physically ill. "My lady," he says quietly, "you need to stop him." Stop what? The Duke has ordered military action against noble houses suspected of involvement in yesterday's attack. No legal process, just elimination. Celine's blood goes cold. How many houses? 7. 7 noble families. Hundreds of people. Servants, children, distant relatives. All targeted for elimination because of military action some members participated in. It's genocide disguised as justice. She finds Alaric in the war room surrounded by military maps and deployment orders. "Tell me Marcus is wrong," she says without preamble. "He's not." "Alaric, you can't seriously. They murdered 16 civilians under my protection." His voice is absolutely flat. They did so to send a message. I'm sending one back. By killing hundreds of people. By eliminating threats to governance stability. That's mass murder. That's war. No. She moves to the map, forces him to look at her. War has rules, trials, legal process. This is just slaughter. Legal process failed. The aristocracy has been subverting trials for decades. I'm done pretending the system works. So you're abandoning the system entirely. I'm protecting the people who make the system function by becoming exactly the monster they claim you are. He doesn't answer, because there is no answer. This is the end point of every ruthless calculation, every line crossed, every compromise made. Eventually, you become the thing you fought against. Call it off, Celine says quietly. No. Then I'm leaving. The words hang in air between them like suspended execution. Alaric goes very still. Explain. I can't be part of this. Can't stand beside you while you commit atrocities for the sake of effectiveness. She's crying now. Doesn't bother hiding it. I love you, but I love my principles more. Your principles won't protect administrators from noble violence. Maybe not, but abandoning them won't protect me from becoming someone I don't recognize. Alaric moves toward her, stops when she steps back. Celine, if you leave, we lose. Everything we've built collapses. Then it collapses. Better that than building an empire on corpses. People are already dying. 16 yesterday. How many tomorrow if I don't act? How many tomorrow if you do? How many innocents in those 7 houses? Servants who had nothing to do with the attack. Children who don't even understand politics. Collateral damage. Human beings. The distinction doesn't change the arithmetic. Celine stares at him. And that's the problem, isn't it? You've reduced people to arithmetic, made suffering into acceptable losses, transformed governance into nothing but calculations. Because that's what governance is. No, that's what tyranny is. She turns toward the door. Alaric's voice stops her. If you walk out that door, you abandon everyone who's depending on us. Every administrator who chose our side. Every civilian whose life improved under our systems. I know, and you're comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with not becoming a mass murderer. Everything else I'll have to live with. She reaches the door. Celine. She doesn't turn. I need you. The vulnerability in those 3 words is devastating. I know, she says quietly, but you need your principles more. And right now, you don't have them. She leaves. The door closes. Alaric stands alone in the war room, surrounded by maps and deployment orders and calculations written in human cost. Outside, dawn breaks over Dunmere Hall. Inside, something fundamental breaks inside the Duke. He looks at the military orders. 7 noble houses, hundreds of people, children who will never understand why they're dying. All for effectiveness. All for a system that functions. All for arithmetic that balances. His hand moves to the orders. Hesitates. Then with absolute precision, he tears them in half. The torn military orders lie on the war room floor like evidence of temporary sanity. Alaric stares at them for 20 minutes without moving. His hand had torn the paper. His brain understands the action. But some deeper part of him, the part that's been calculating acceptable casualties for 15 years, doesn't comprehend the choice. He just chose principles over effectiveness, chose morality over survival. And in doing so, he may have condemned everyone who trusted him, because the nobility won't stop. The attack on the merchant convoy wasn't isolated aggression, it was declaration of war. And wars don't pause because one side develops conscience. Marcus enters without knocking, sees the torn orders. His face goes carefully neutral. Your Grace, the military commanders are waiting for confirmation. Tell them the operation is canceled. Marcus doesn't move. Your Grace, with respect. Those noble houses are organizing armed resistance. If we don't strike first, we don't strike at all. Not like that. Then how do we respond to yesterday's attack? Alaric finally looks at him. I don't know. The admission costs everything, because a duke isn't supposed to say I don't know. Isn't supposed to show uncertainty. Authority requires absolute conviction even when that conviction is performance. But Alaric is done performing. Your Grace, Marcus says carefully. Lady Ashford's departure has already spread through the staff. Combined with cancelled military action, it projects weakness. Then I'm weak. You're not weak. You're human. Alaric's voice is flat. I'm human, and I'm exhausted from pretending otherwise. Marcus stands in uncomfortable silence. He served the Viermont family for 30 years, watched Alaric's father rule through calculated brutality, watched Alaric himself transform from idealistic heir into strategic weapon. This version, uncertain, conflicted, admitting limitation, is completely unfamiliar. What do you need? Marcus asks finally. Time to think. We may not have time. Then we'll make mistakes. Better honest mistakes than calculated atrocities. Marcus bows and withdraws. Alaric remains alone in the war room as morning light cuts through windows like accusation. The thing about power is this: it's easier to maintain through fear than through trust. Fear is simple, predictable. You hurt people who disobey, and everyone else falls in line. Trust requires constant maintenance, requires showing vulnerability, requires admitting when you're wrong. And vulnerability gets you killed. Alaric learned that lesson young, watched his father demonstrate it repeatedly. Trust no one completely, show no weakness. Rule through strategic certainty even when internally uncertain. It worked. It built an empire, and it destroyed his father from the inside until the old duke died bitter and isolated, surrounded by subjects who feared him and no one who actually knew him. Alaric swore he'd be different, then spent 15 years becoming identical, until Celine. She made him want different, want better, want systems that actually served people instead of just consolidating power. And now she's gone, because he couldn't stop calculating long enough to remember why he wanted different in the first place. The irony is devastating. 2 hours later, emergency reports start arriving. 3 more attacks on administrative convoys. Coordinated. Simultaneous. Targeting the people who'd sided with ducal authority over noble privilege. 23 dead, dozens wounded, supply chains severed. The message is clear. We can kill your supporters faster than you can protect them. And Alaric has no response. Because military retaliation requires exactly the ruthlessness he just rejected, requires becoming the monster Celine accused him of being. But inaction allows systematic murder of people who trusted him. There's no good choice, only different flavors of failure. He's still processing the reports when an unexpected visitor arrives. Thomas Barrow, the estate manager who'd led the administrative delegation weeks ago. The man looks haunted. Your Grace, Barrow says without preamble, we need protection. I know. Then why aren't we getting it? Alaric meets his eyes. Because the protection you need requires methods I can't justify. Barrow stares. What does that mean? It means I can defend you through military force that kills innocent people along with guilty ones. Or I can maintain moral principles while you die. Those are the options. That's not acceptable. No, but it's honest. Barrow's face flushes with anger. We supported you, defied our lords, risked everything because you said competence mattered more than tradition. And now you're abandoning us because protecting us requires getting your hands dirty? Yes. The blunt admission shocks them both. Because Alaric isn't trying to justify his position, isn't offering strategic rationale, just stating reality. Barrow's voice drops to something dangerous. Then you're not better than the nobles. You're worse. Because they never pretended to care about anything except their own power. You made us believe in something different. I believed in it too. Past tense? Alaric doesn't answer. Because he doesn't know anymore. Doesn't know if systemic change is possible without becoming the thing you're fighting. Doesn't know if governance can be both effective and ethical. Maybe the whole premise was flawed. Maybe power always corrupts. Maybe Celine was right to leave. Barrow turns toward the door, then stops. Your Grace. One more thing. Yes. Lady Ashford. Where is she? Gone. Where? I don't know. Barrow's laugh is bitter. You don't know where the woman you restructured the entire duchy for is located. That's either strategic incompetence or emotional dysfunction. Both. You should find her. Why? Because whatever you're going through it wrong. And she's the only person who's ever called you on your bullshit effectively. He leaves before Alaric can respond. The silence that follows tastes like truth. Because Barrow is right. Alaric is spiraling, making decisions based on guilt and exhaustion rather than clarity. And Celine, wherever she is, would see through the spiral immediately. Would tell him he's being self-indulgent, that moral crisis is a luxury when people are dying. Would force him to choose effectiveness or principles, Not both, because both is a fantasy. But she's not here. And Alaric is alone with consequences of choices he can't unmake and problems he can't solve. The administrative casualties continue through the week. 37 dead by day 3, 52 by day 5. Each death is documented, each name recorded. Each loss a specific indictment of Alaric's paralysis. The administrators start requesting reassignment, asking to be released from ducal authority, preferring to return to noble oversight rather than die supporting a duke who won't protect them. Alaric grants every request. What else can he do? By week's end, the administrative revolution has collapsed entirely. Every manager who defied noble authority is either dead, wounded, or withdrawn. The restructuring fails, not through noble victory, through ducal surrender, and the aristocracy knows it. Lord Harrington sends a formal communication on day 7. Not a letter, a declaration. It reads, "Your Grace, the Council is prepared to negotiate terms of your abdication. We recognize your difficulties and are willing to arrange dignified transition. Reply within 48 hours or we proceed with formal removal. It's mercy disguised as threat." Offering Alaric chance to surrender authority before they take it by force. He's reading the declaration for the 3rd time when Marcus enters with different news. "Your Grace, Lady Ashford has been located." Alaric's heart stops. "Where?" "The Northern Monastery. She's requested sanctuary." "Sanctuary from what?" "From you, Your Grace." The words land like physical blows. Because sanctuary is what you request when fleeing danger, when hiding from threat, when the person you're running from has power to hurt you. Celine is hiding from him, not from the nobility, not from political opposition, from Alaric himself. The realization is devastating. "I need to see her," he says. "Your Grace, she specifically requested—" "I don't care what she requested." Alaric's voice hardens. "I need to see her." Marcus hesitates. Then, "The monastery won't grant access without her permission." "Then get her permission. She's already refused twice." "Try again." "Your Grace, that's not a request." Marcus bows and withdraws. Alaric stands alone, feeling something he hasn't felt in 15 years. Powerless. Complete institutional authority, and he can't access the one person whose opinion actually matters. Can't force entry to the monastery without violating sacred ground. Can't compel Celine's presence without becoming exactly the tyrant she fled. Can't do anything except wait for permission that may never come. It's a special kind of hell designed for people who've spent their lives controlling everything. 3 days pass without response. The council's deadline approaches. 48 hours becomes 24. Then 12. Alaric spends the time reviewing 15 years of governance, looking for the moment where strategic precision became moral compromise, where effectiveness became excuse for atrocity. It's not a single moment. It's accumulation. 1,000 small calculations that individually seem justified but collectively transform you into someone unrecognizable. His father used to say, "Power is the art of necessary evil. The duke who hesitates is the duke who fails." Alaric believed him, built an empire on that belief, and became his father in the process. With 6 hours remaining before the council deadline, permission finally arrives. Lady Ashford will see the duke. 1 hour. No guards, no weapons, no authority. Just 2 people talking. Alaric leaves immediately. The Northern Monastery sits 3 hours' ride from Dunmere Hall, built into cliff faces overlooking territories that have been contested for centuries. It's neutral ground, sacred ground. The one place aristocratic politics supposedly can't reach, though politics reaches everywhere eventually. Alaric arrives as afternoon light turns the stone buildings golden. He's wearing plain clothes, no ducal insignia, no symbols of authority, as requested. A monk meets him at the entrance, says nothing, just leads him through corridors that smell like incense and old books. They reach a private garden overlooking the valley. Celine is waiting. She looks different. Hair unbound, wearing simple gray robes. No cosmetics, no performance. Just herself. She's more beautiful than he remembers. The monk withdraws. They stand in silence for a long moment. Finally, Celine speaks. "You look terrible." "So do you. I've been crying for a week straight." "What's your excuse? Governance collapse, administrative casualties, impending abdication. Take your pick." She almost smiles, then doesn't. "Why are you here, Alaric?" "Because I need to understand." "Understand what?" why you left, why you're hiding from me, why you requested sanctuary like I'm some kind of threat. Celine moves to the garden wall, looks out over territories they'd tried to restructure together. You were going to kill hundreds of people, she says quietly. Children, servants, people who had nothing to do with the attack. You were going to murder them because the arithmetic balanced. I didn't, only because I stopped you. No, because I stopped myself. After I left. Her voice is flat. After I called you a tyrant and walked out. Don't pretend you had moral revelation independent of consequences. The accusation is fair and devastating. Because she's right. He tore up those orders after she left. After she forced him to see what he'd become. Not before. You're right, he admits. I didn't see clearly until you made me see. That's not redemption. That's just delayed conscience. So why are you here? Because delayed conscience is still conscience. And I need to know if that's enough. Enough for what? For you to come back. Celine turns to face him. Her eyes are red from crying. Her composure is completely shattered. Come back to what? She asks. A duchy in collapse? An administrative network destroyed? A duke who can't decide whether to be tyrant or martyr? Come back to me. The honesty in those 3 words is absolute. Celine stares at him. That's not fair. I know. You can't ask me to choose between my principles and my feelings for you. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to help me figure out how to have both. That's not possible. Then we fail together. But we fail honestly. Celine's breathing has changed. Faster. Shallower. You don't understand what you're asking, she says. If I come back, I become complicit in whatever you do next. Every decision you make reflects on both of us. Yes. And if you make the wrong decision, then we both live with it. She moves closer, close enough that he can see tears gathering in her eyes. I can't watch you become your father, she whispers. Then help me be different. How? How do I help when every choice is between atrocity and surrender? By standing beside me while we find the third option. There is no third option. That's what I've been trying to tell you. Governance at this level is always choosing between terrible alternatives. Then we choose the least terrible. Together. Celine searches his face, looking for something. Certainty, maybe. Or conviction. She finds only exhaustion and desperate honesty. The council wants you to abdicate, she says finally. I know. Are you going to? I don't know. What do you want? I want to build systems that work without becoming a monster. I want to govern through competence without justifying atrocity. I want you beside me while I figure out if that's even possible. He pauses. And if it's not possible, I want to fail with integrity instead of succeed through horror. Celine is crying openly now. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. It's the most honest thing I've said to anyone. She closes the distance between them. Doesn't kiss him. Just leans her forehead against his chest. I'm so tired, she says brokenly. Me too. They stand like that for a long time. 2 people holding each other up, while everything they built collapses around them. Finally, Celine pulls back. If I come back, things have to change. How? No more calculations that treat people as acceptable losses. No more ruthless arithmetic. We find ways to protect administrators that don't require mass murder. And if there are no ways, then we fail. But we fail as humans, not monsters. Alaric takes her hand. Agreed. I mean it. If you cross that line again, you leave. I understand. No. She squeezes his hand hard enough to hurt. If you cross that line again, I'll stop you, physically if necessary. I won't just leave, I'll actively oppose you. The threat is real. And somehow it's the most loving thing she's ever said to him. Because she's not promising unconditional support. She's promising accountability, the kind that prevents you from becoming the thing you fear. I understand, he says. Good. They leave the monastery together as evening falls. The ride back to Dunmere Hall takes 3 hours through darkness. They don't speak much. Don't need to. Some understandings exist beyond words. But when they're an hour from the estate, Celine finally breaks silence. The council deadline has passed, she says. I know. So they'll move to remove you formally. Probably. And you have no plan. Not yet. She's quiet for a moment. Then, what if we give them what they want? Alaric turns in his saddle. Explain. What if you abdicate? Voluntarily, before they can force removal. That's surrender, or strategic retreat. She's thinking out loud now, voice gaining energy. You step down, publicly acknowledge that restructuring failed, accept responsibility for administrative casualties. And then what? Then we rebuild. Not from position of ducal authority, from ground level. The way I built my network originally, without institutional power, without the corruption that comes with institutional power. Alaric considers it. The logic is sound, but the cost is staggering. 15 years of consolidated authority, 300 years of family legacy, all surrendered voluntarily. For what? A chance to rebuild outside aristocratic structures. It's either brilliant or insane, maybe both. They'd never let us operate freely, he says. The nobility would suppress any network we tried to build. Only if they saw us as threat. But a former duke who abdicated in disgrace? We'd be beneath their notice. Until we weren't. By then we'd have established enough grassroots support to be untouchable. It's a massive gamble. All systemic change is gamble. Alaric is quiet for a long time. Then, if I do this, there's no going back. Can't reclaim ducal authority once surrendered. I know. Can't protect you through institutional power. I don't need institutional power. I need honest partnership. The conviction in her voice is absolute, and Alaric realizes something fundamental. He's been clinging to ducal authority because it's all he knows, all he's been trained for. But authority hasn't made him effective. It's made him monstrous. Maybe effectiveness doesn't require authority. Maybe it just requires commitment and competence. And maybe he's been confusing power with purpose his entire life. All right, he says finally. Let's do it. You're sure? No, but I'm willing. Celine reaches across the space between horses, takes his hand, then we do it together. They reach Dunmere Hall 3 hours before dawn. The estate is dark, except for council chamber where nobles have gathered awaiting ducal response to their ultimatum. Alaric and Celine enter together. The reaction is immediate shock. No one expected Celine's return. No one expected the Duke to arrive before deadline. Harrington stands. Your Grace, we weren't expecting... I'm here to respond to your ultimatum. Alaric's voice is steady. I accept abdication. The chamber goes silent. Thorne leans forward. You're surrendering ducal authority, effective immediately. I'll draft formal documents within the hour. The nobles exchange glances. This is too easy, too complete. There must be conditions, Harrington says carefully. No conditions. I abdicate fully and completely, transfer all ducal authority to council governance. Why? Because governance restructuring failed. Administrative casualties are my responsibility. And I'm not willing to become the kind of ruler who justifies atrocity through arithmetic. The honesty shocks them. Because aristocrats don't admit failure, don't acknowledge responsibility, don't voluntarily surrender power. It's unprecedented and deeply suspicious. What's your real motive? Thorne asks. There is no real motive. I'm tired of calculating acceptable casualties, tired of ruling through fear, tired of becoming my father. He looks around the chamber. You wanted me gone. I'm gone. Govern however you want. And Lady Ashford, someone asks, comes with me. We'll operate outside aristocratic structures entirely. Doing what? Whatever we choose. You'll have no authority over us, and we'll claim no authority over anyone else. The implication settles slowly. A former duke and the woman who restructured his governance, operating independently, building networks outside noble control. It's either complete surrender or the beginning of something more dangerous than any ducal authority. Harrington seems to realize it first. Your Grace, we can't simply let you... You can't stop me. Alaric's voice is flat. I'll be a private citizen. No title, no authority, no institutional power. What legal grounds do you have to restrict my activity? Silence. Because he's right. Once he abdicates, he's subject to the same laws as everyone else. And those laws don't restrict private charity or economic organization. The council wanted him powerless. They're about to discover powerless doesn't mean harmless. This is a trap, Thorne says quietly. No, this is abdication. You'll get exactly what you demanded, but not what you wanted. Harrington finishes. Alaric smiles. It's not a pleasant expression. You wanted me removed from authority. I'm removing myself. If that creates consequences you didn't anticipate, that's your problem. He turns toward the door. Celine follows. Behind them, the council erupts in argument. They make it to the corridor before Celine speaks. That was reckless. Probably. They'll realize what you're doing and try to stop it. Let them try. She grabs his arm, forces him to stop. Look at me. He does. This only works if we're actually committed to building something better, not just undermining them out of spite. I know. Do you? Because that speech sounded like a man who's planning revenge, not reconstruction. Maybe it's both. Celine's grip tightens. No, it's one or the other. Revenge keeps you tied to the system you're leaving. Reconstruction means actually building different. You're right. So which is it? Alaric takes a long breath. Reconstruction. With enough strategic positioning that they can't suppress it. That's acceptable. They continue walking. By the time they reach Alaric's private chambers, dawn is breaking. The formal abdication documents take an hour to draft. Celine helps, making sure the language is absolute. No loopholes, no residual authority. Complete surrender of ducal title and power. Alaric signs them with hands that don't shake. Then he seals the documents and sends them to the council chamber via Marcus. The old steward looks like he's watching his entire world collapse. Your Grace. Not anymore. Just Alaric. Marcus's composure finally breaks. Sir, what am I supposed to do? Whatever you choose. You're released from service. I've served your family for 30 years. Then consider this retirement, with full pension and my genuine gratitude. Marcus stands in silence. Then he bows, deeper than required, and leaves without another word. The door closes. Alaric and Celine stand alone in chambers that no longer belong to them. Strange, Alaric says quietly. 15 years building authority. Gone in an hour. How do you feel? He considers the question honestly. Lighter, terrified, free, good. Is it better than feeling powerful and monstrous? They pack personal belongings. Not much. A few books, clothing, documents Celine had compiled on her network operations. Everything else stays. The estate, the wealth, the institutional power. All of it surrendered. By mid-morning, they're ready to leave. Alaric takes one last look at Dunmere Hall from the northern tower. The estate spreads below like a physical manifestation of everything he's been, everything he's leaving behind. No regrets, Celine asks from the doorway. Thousands. But none strong enough to change the decision. She joins him at the window. Where do we go? Wherever the work is. That's not a plan. No, it's a direction. They leave Dunmere Hall on horseback. No guards, no escort, no ceremony. Just two people riding toward uncertain future. Behind them, the council is already moving to consolidate power. Appointing interim governance, restructuring authority, returning everything to exactly how it was before. Or trying to. Because here's the thing about systemic change. Once people see better systems are possible, you can't unmake that knowledge. The administrators who survived, the civilians who experienced functional governance, the territories that saw economic improvement, they know better exists, and knowledge like that doesn't disappear just because authority changes hands. 3 days later, Alaric and Celine reached the first territory where her network had operated. The village is small, rural, exactly the kind of place aristocratic governance ignores. They arrive without announcement. Find the local administrator, a woman named Sarah, who'd managed distribution systems under Celine's network. Sarah stares at them in shock. Lady Ashford, Your Grace. Not anymore, just Alaric. Sarah looks between them. What are you doing here? Looking for work, Celine says simply. Your distribution systems need someone to manage coordination, yes? Sarah's laugh is disbelieving. You want to work as a coordinator? If you'll have me, the former Duke and the woman who restructured governance want to work in my village as administrators. Yes. Why? Because effective systems matter more than titles. Sarah studies them carefully. Then, you're serious. Completely. The administrator is quiet for a long moment. Then she smiles. It's a real smile. Unguarded. All right. We need help with grain storage optimization and winter supply planning. Think you can handle it? Celine grins. I've done it before. And you, Sarah looks at Alaric. What are your skills? Strategic planning. Resource allocation. Infrastructure coordination. Can you dig irrigation ditches? If necessary. Then welcome to the village. You start tomorrow. That easily, they're integrated. No ceremony, no recognition, no authority, just work. That night, sleeping in a small room above the village hall, Celine turns to Alaric. This is insane, she says. Yes, we went from governing an entire duchy to managing grain storage in a village of 200 people. Yes, and you're okay with that. Alaric considers it. Thinks about 15 years of calculated authority, years of treating people as arithmetic, years of becoming something he hated. I'm better than okay, he says finally. I'm human again. Celine kisses him. It's different from their previous kisses, less desperate, more grounded, real. When they separate, she's smiling. So what now? Now we build. One village at a time. No institutional power, no aristocratic authority, just competence and commitment. And when the nobility tries to stop us, we'll deal with it, together. It's not a plan. It's barely even a strategy. But it's honest. And honesty, they're both learning, is more powerful than any authority. 2 months pass. The village systems stabilize. Grain storage optimized. Winter supply secured. Economic output increases measurably. Other villages hear about it. Request help. Alaric and Celine travel. Advise. Coordinate. Build networks that connect communities outside aristocratic oversight. It's slow work. Harder than governing through decree, but also more real. And slowly, a pattern emerges. Villages operating under their systems outperform those under noble governance. Not dramatically, but measurably. The difference compounds. Within 6 months, 12 villages have adopted their coordination models. Within a year, 30. The nobility notices. Of course they notice. But what can they do? Alaric and Celine hold no authority, make no political claims, simply help communities organize more effectively. It's not illegal, not even technically subversive, just better. And better is the most dangerous threat to established power. Harrington sends a messenger after 14 months, requesting meeting. Alaric agrees out of curiosity more than strategy. They meet in neutral territory, a tavern halfway between Dunmere Hall and the village network Alaric and Celine have built. Harrington looks older, worn. The past year hasn't been kind to him. You're destroying us, he says without preamble. I'm not doing anything to you. Your networks are bleeding population from noble territories. People are relocating to villages under your coordination. Our tax base is collapsing. So govern better. Harrington's laugh is bitter. We can't compete with you. You have no overhead, no bureaucracy, no corruption to maintain. You just help people. Yes. It's not fair. Life isn't fair. Governance should be. Harrington leans forward. What do you want? What would it take for you to stop? Alaric considers the question. Then, nothing. Nothing? I don't want your money, don't want your authority, don't want anything except to help communities function better. That's not sustainable. Why not? Because the nobility won't allow grassroots networks to undermine aristocratic governance indefinitely. Eventually we'll be forced to act. How? I hold no authority. Break no laws. Simply coordinate willing participants. We'll find a way. You're welcome to try. Harrington stands. This isn't over. I know, you'll regret this. Maybe, but I won't regret it the way I regretted being Duke. The meeting ends. Harrington returns to Dunmere Hall. Alaric returns to the village network. And the quiet revolution continues. Because here's the thing about power built from ground up versus power imposed from above. Ground up power is much harder to eliminate. No single point of failure. No central authority to remove. Just thousands of small connections that collectively create something stronger than any institutional force. The nobility is learning this slowly. And by the time they fully understand, it'll be too late. 2 years after abdication, Alaric and Celine's network coordinates 47 villages across 5 territories. Not through authority, through effectiveness. The economic data is unambiguous. Villages in the network outperform noble-governed territories by every metric: agricultural output, crime rates, economic stability, quality of life. All better. And people notice. More villages request coordination. More communities organize outside aristocratic structures. The shift isn't dramatic. There's no revolution, no uprising, just slow, steady migration towards systems that actually work. It's the most dangerous kind of change. The kind that happens so gradually the old structures collapse before realizing they're under threat. One evening, 2 years and 4 months after abdication, Celine finds Alaric reviewing coordination schedules. "We did it," she says quietly. "Did what?" "Built better systems without becoming monsters." Alaric looks up, sees her standing in doorway backlit by sunset. She's wearing work clothes, hair tied back practically, hands stained with ink from documentation. She's never been more beautiful. "You built it," he says. "I just helped. We built it together." She moves into the room, sits beside him. Equal partnership, no authority, just competence and commitment. Like we promised. Like we promised. They sit in comfortable silence. Outside, the village settles into evening routine. Children playing, families gathering, systems functioning. Not perfect, but functional. Human. "Do you miss it?" Celine asks. "The power. Sometimes." Alaric admits it honestly. "Then I remember what it cost, who it made me become, and it's worth it. This, over that, every time." She leans against him. "We're going to keep growing," she says. "The network, more villages, more coordination. Eventually, the nobility will have to acknowledge we've built parallel governance structures. Let them acknowledge it. We're not breaking laws. Not yet. But there's a point where effectiveness becomes threat, regardless of legality. Then we'll deal with it when we reach that point." Celine is quiet for a moment. Then, "What if they come for us? Really come for us? Not politically, physically. Then we respond proportionally. Defend ourselves. But we don't initiate violence, even if it means losing everything. Even then, you've changed." "Yes. For the better. I hope so." She kisses him, long and slow, like they have all the time in the world. When they separate, she's smiling. "I love you," she says. "Not because of what you were, because of what you've become." What have I become? Human, fallible, honest. Those aren't usually compliments. They are when the alternative is monster, who justifies atrocities through arithmetic. Fair point. They spend the night planning next stages of network expansion. Where to coordinate, how to scale, what systems need development. It's work that would have bored Alaric 2 years ago. Now it's the only work that matters. Because he's finally building something that serves people instead of consolidating power. Finally using his strategic mind for construction instead of domination. Finally becoming someone he can recognize in the mirror. The transformation isn't complete. Probably never will be. There are still moments where old calculations surface, where he thinks in terms of acceptable casualties and strategic ruthlessness. But Celine is there to pull him back, to remind him that effectiveness without ethics is just sophisticated cruelty. And slowly, very slowly, the calculations change, become more human, less monstrous. 3 years after abdication, the inevitable confrontation arrives. The Council of Nobles issues formal decree. All village coordination networks operating outside noble authority are declared illegal. Immediate dissolution required. It's overreach, probably unenforceable, but it's also declaration of war. The message is clear: submit to aristocratic governance or face consequences. Alaric reads the decree 3 times. Then he calls meeting of all village coordinators. 47 communities, nearly 300 people, all gathered to decide collective response. It's the largest assembly Alaric has addressed since abdication. He stands before them feeling something he hasn't felt in years. Responsible. Not for authority. For people who've trusted him. The council wants us dissolved, he says without preamble. Claims our networks are illegal. Demands immediate cessation. The room erupts in angry response. Alaric raises a hand for silence. Gets it. We have 3 options, he continues. First, comply. Dissolve the networks. Return to noble governance. No one speaks. The rejection is unanimous without needing words. Second, resist violently. Refuse the decree through force. This generates some murmuring, a few voices of support, mostly uncertainty. Third, resist legally. Challenge the decree through existing frameworks while continuing operations. What's the difference between legal resistance and violence? Someone asks. Legal resistance we win or lose through argument and institutional process. Violence we win or lose through blood. The room goes quiet. Then Sarah, the first administrator who'd hired them, speaks up. What do you recommend? Alaric looks at Celine. She nods. Legal resistance first, he says. Violence only if they initiate it. And if we do fight, we fight defensively. To protect what we've built, not to destroy them. That's not enough, someone shouts. They'll crush us. Maybe. But I won't become the thing I've spent 3 years avoiding. Won't justify violence because it's convenient, even if it means we lose. Even then. Thomas Barrow, the same estate manager who'd confronted Alaric 3 years ago, stands. I supported you when you were Duke, defied my lords. Watched colleagues die because you couldn't protect us. Alaric meets his eyes. I know. And now you're asking us to trust you again, to resist legally while they come at us with force. Yes. Why should we? Because this time I'm not asking you to trust my authority. I'm asking you to trust my commitment to not become what we're fighting. Barrow studies him for a long moment. Then, what happens if legal resistance fails? Then we've lost. But we've lost as humans, not monsters. The room is silent. Then slowly people start nodding, one by one, agreement spreading like ripples. Not enthusiastic agreement, wary agreement, the kind that acknowledges terrible odds but chooses integrity anyway. It's enough. The vote is unanimous, legal resistance, defensive preparation, but no initiated violence. They'll challenge the decree through existing legal frameworks, continue operations during challenge, prepare to defend communities if nobles attack. It's not a strong position, but it's a human one. After the meeting, Celine finds Alaric alone. That was brave, she says. That was terrifying. You're telling 300 people to resist power structures while refusing to become equally ruthless. That's either brilliance or suicide. Maybe both. She takes his hand. I'm proud of you. For what? For being the man I hoped you could become. The one who chooses integrity even when calculation would be easier. Alaric squeezes her hand. I wouldn't be him without you. Yes, you would. It just would have taken longer. They stand together watching sun set over territories they no longer govern, but somehow serve more honestly than ever before. Tomorrow they'll file legal challenges. Next week the council will likely reject them. And then uncertainty. But they'll face it together. Two people who learned that power without ethics is just sophisticated monstrosity, who discovered that losing authority can mean finding humanity, who chose to build something better even knowing it might cost everything. The outcome is uncertain, the choice is absolute, and in the end, that's all anyone can control. Not results, but decisions. Not victory, but integrity. Not power, but purpose. The sun sets. Darkness falls. And in 47 villages across 5 territories, systems built on competence instead of authority continue functioning. Quietly revolutionary, dangerously effective, completely human. Whatever comes next, they'll face it honestly. That has to be enough. The legal challenge to the council's decree lasts exactly 9 days before being dismissed. Not because the arguments are weak, because the magistrate who hears them is Lord Harrington's cousin. Conflict of interest obvious enough to be insulting. The dismissal notice arrives at dawn on the 10th day. Alaric reads it standing in the village hall while Selene prepares morning coordination schedules. Rejected on grounds of jurisdictional overreach, he says flatly. Claims we lack standing to challenge noble governance. Selene sets down her pen. So they're not even pretending the system is fair anymore. No. What's next? Enforcement. They'll send soldiers to dissolve the networks by force, probably within the week. And we defend ourselves. If they attack first. Yes, Alaric looks at her. Really looks. Sees exhaustion around her eyes from 3 years of 18-hour days building systems village by village. Sees determination that hasn't wavered despite knowing this confrontation was inevitable. Sees the woman who made him want to be better than the monster authority had shaped him into. You can still leave, he says quietly. This isn't your fight. Celine's laugh is sharp. Not my fight? I designed these networks, coordinated these communities, convinced 300 people that competence matters more than authority. She moves closer, voice dropping to something fierce. This is exactly my fight. And if you think I'm abandoning it because soldiers are coming, you don't know me at all. I know you. That's why I'm offering the option. Then stop offering. She grips his jacket. We stand together or we don't stand at all. The conviction in her voice is absolute. And Alaric realizes something he's known for months but never articulated. This woman is more dangerous than any army. Not because she's violent, because she's immovable when defending what she believes in. The nobility is about to learn that the hard way. The soldiers arrive 6 days later, 200 armed men, professional military, led by a commander named Captain Voss, who Alaric remembers from his own campaigns. Good soldier, competent, ruthless when orders require it. They make camp outside the primary village at midday. Don't attack, just establish visible presence. Psychological pressure, waiting to see if the networks collapse without actual violence. Alaric watches from the village wall. Celine stands beside him. That's a lot of soldiers, she says quietly. Yes. Can we defend against that many? Not through direct combat. We're coordinators and farmers, not warriors. So what do? We make them choose between following orders and maintaining conscience. Celine looks at him sharply. Explain. Those soldiers are professional military. They follow commands. But they're also human. If we force them to see what they're actually doing, attacking civilians for organizing better governance, some of them might refuse. That's optimistic. That's necessary. An hour later, Captain Voss sends messenger requesting parley. Alaric agrees, meets him in neutral ground between village and military camp. Voss looks exactly like Alaric remembers, weathered, practical. The kind of soldier who views orders as sacred regardless of content. Your Grace, Voss begins. Just Alaric now. Voss acknowledges the correction with slight nod. I have orders to dissolve your coordination networks, forcibly if necessary. I understand. I'd prefer to do this without bloodshed. So would I. Then stand down. Disperse the networks voluntarily. No one needs to die. Alaric meets his eyes. Captain, you're a good soldier. I remember your service. You followed every order I gave during the northern campaigns. I did. Even the ones that troubled you. Voss's jaw tightens. Every order, sir, including the village pacification at Wintermarch. That was different, was it? We justified civilian casualties as necessary for regional stability, called it acceptable losses, made arithmetic out of human suffering. There's a long silence. I followed orders, Voss says finally. That's what soldiers do. I know. I gave those orders. Alaric's voice is quiet but carries weight, and I've spent 3 years learning to live with the consequences. Learning that effectiveness doesn't justify atrocity. He pauses. You're about to receive orders to attack civilians who've committed no crime except organizing better governance. You'll follow those orders because that's what good soldiers do. And in 10 years, you'll wake up remembering the people you killed today, wondering if following orders was enough justification. I don't have the luxury of questioning orders. Everyone has that luxury. Most people just don't take it. Voss's expression hardens. I'm not here to debate philosophy. I'm here to deliver ultimatum. Disperse within 24 hours or face military enforcement. Understood. Will you comply? No. Voss nods slowly. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Actually, we do. Alaric doesn't move. When you attack tomorrow, you'll be killing farmers and administrators. People whose only crime is coordination. Your soldiers will see that. Some of them will refuse orders. My soldiers follow commands. All of them? You're certain there's not a single man in your company who will hesitate when ordered to kill unarmed civilians? The question lands precisely where Alaric intended. Because Voss can't be certain. No commander can. Every military force contains individuals who will break under moral pressure. That's the weakness Alaric is targeting, not military capacity. Moral cohesion. My soldiers will do their duty, Voss says, but his voice carries slight uncertainty. I hope you're right, Alaric says quietly, for your sake. He turns and walks back to the village. Behind him, Voss stands in neutral ground, looking troubled. That evening, Alaric gathers all village coordinators and able-bodied residents, 347 people, ages ranging from 16 to 70, none of them soldiers, all of them determined. Tomorrow they come for us, Alaric says without preamble. 200 professional soldiers with orders to dissolve our networks by force. The crowd murmurs, fear mixing with anger. We can't beat them through violence, he continues. We're not warriors, but we can beat them through moral clarity. How? Someone shouts. By making them see exactly what they're doing. By standing in plain sight, unarmed, organized, forcing every soldier to look at the people they're attacking. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's honest suicide. better than becoming what we're fighting. Thomas Barrow pushes to the front. You're asking us to stand defenseless while armed soldiers attack. I'm asking you to trust that some soldiers won't attack when they see what they're actually being ordered to do. And if you're wrong, then we die. But we die as humans defending systems we believe in, not as monsters justifying violence through better arithmetic. The silence that follows is absolute, because Alaric is asking for something nearly impossible, asking people to bet their lives on the conscience of soldiers following orders. It's either profound faith in humanity or complete delusion, maybe both. Celine steps forward, stands beside Alaric, faces the crowd. I've spent 3 years building these networks with you, she says. Not because I wanted power, because I wanted systems that actually work, that serve people instead of exploiting them. Her voice strengthens. The nobility is attacking us because we've proven better governance is possible, because we're threatening their authority simply by being effective. If we fight them violently, we become what they claim we are. Rebels, threats, justifications for their crackdown. But if we stand peacefully, if we show every soldier and every civilian watching that we're just people trying to help communities function better, she pauses. Then even if they kill us, they lose. Because violence against peaceful coordinators proves everything we've been saying about aristocratic corruption. Sarah, the administrator who'd first hired them, speaks up. So we're martyrs. No, Alaric says, we're witnesses. To the difference between power built on violence and systems built on competence. Someone else asks, what if they don't care? What if they just slaughter us regardless? Then we've learned something terrible about human nature, Celine says quietly, and died knowing we tried to be better. It's not reassuring, but it's honest. The vote takes 30 minutes. 291 people choose to stand peacefully. 56 choose to evacuate rather than risk death. Alaric grants evacuation without judgment. No one is obligated to die for principles, but 291 people are willing to try. That night, Celine finds Alaric on the village wall, staring at military campfires. Can't sleep, she asks. Shouldn't sleep. Need to be ready. For what? Tomorrow happens whether you sleep or not. For failure. For watching everyone who trusted me die because I convinced them conscience would protect them. Celine sits beside him, takes his hand. You gave them choice. That's more than most leaders ever do. Choice to die peacefully instead of fight. Choice to die as humans instead of monsters. There's a difference. Is there? Or am I just dressing up suicide in philosophical language? She's quiet for a moment. Then, do you remember what you told me 3 years ago, when I left the monastery? Which part? You said you wanted to build systems that work without becoming a monster, that you'd rather fail with integrity than succeed through horror. I remember. Tomorrow is where we find out if you meant it. I meant it. Then trust that. She squeezes his hand. We built something real, something that actually helps people. If the nobility has to slaughter civilians to destroy it, that tells everyone watching exactly what aristocratic power is built on. Small comfort to the dead. Maybe, but it's the only comfort we have. They sit in silence watching campfires. Finally, Alaric speaks. If I've miscalculated, if tomorrow goes wrong and people die because I convinced them to stand peacefully, then we die together. And at least we die knowing we tried to be better than the system that shaped you. The acceptance in her voice is terrifying, because she's not minimizing risk, not pretending this will work out, just acknowledging that some things are worth dying for even when success isn't guaranteed. I love you, Alaric says. I know. If we survive this, we won't survive unchanged. She turns to face him. Whatever happens tomorrow breaks something. Either breaks us or breaks the system we're fighting. No middle ground, I know. Are you ready for that? No. But I'm committed anyway. Good. Me too. They spend the night holding each other, not sleeping, not making love, just present with each other in what might be their final hours. Sometimes presence is all you can offer. Dawn arrives with cruel beauty, clear sky, mild temperature. The kind of morning that should hold markets and children playing. Instead, it holds 291 people gathering in the village square. Unarmed, organized in clear rows, visible to anyone watching. Alaric stands at front, Celine beside him. The symbolism is deliberate. Former duke and the woman who restructured his governance, standing peacefully against military force. At 8 in the morning, Captain Voss's soldiers begin marching toward the village. Disciplined formation, weapons ready, professional, and terrifying. The villagers tense, several people start crying. One man breaks ranks and runs. Alaric doesn't blame him. The soldiers reach the village perimeter, stop 50 meters from the gathered civilians. Voss walks forward alone, stops 10 meters from Alaric. For a long moment, they simply look at each other. Then Voss speaks. "This is your final chance. Disperse now and no one gets hurt." "We're not dispersing," Alaric says clearly, loud enough for soldiers and civilians to hear. "These networks exist to help communities function better. We've broken no laws, committed no violence, simply organized more effectively than aristocratic governance." He pauses. "If you attack us, you're not enforcing law. You're enforcing privilege, protecting a system that fails people in service of maintaining noble authority. I have my orders. I know. I've given similar orders, watched good soldiers follow them, even when those orders were wrong." Alaric's voice carries absolute conviction. But eventually those soldiers wake up. Remember the people they killed. Wonder if following orders was enough justification. Voss's expression flickers. Barely. But Alaric sees it. Doubt. Behind Voss, soldiers shift, uneasy. They can hear this conversation. Can see unarmed civilians standing peacefully. Can feel the moral weight of what they're being ordered to do. "Stand down," Voss says quietly. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "I'm making it exactly as hard as it should be," Alaric responds. "You're being ordered to attack civilians. That should be hard. Should trouble your conscience. Should make you question whether following orders is always right. I don't have the luxury of questioning. Everyone has that luxury. The question is whether you have the courage to take it." Silence falls. Behind Voss, one soldier lowers his weapon. Then another. Voss notices. His jaw tightens. "Raise your weapons," he orders. The soldiers comply, but slowly, reluctantly. Moral cohesion is fracturing exactly as Alaric predicted. "Captain," Alaric says, "you're a good soldier, but good soldiers can serve bad orders. The question you need to ask isn't whether these are your orders, it's whether they're right orders. My job isn't to determine right and wrong. My job is to follow commands. Then you're not a soldier, you're a weapon. And weapons don't get to claim moral innocence. The accusation lands like a blade. Because Alaric is forcing Voss to choose. Follow orders and accept moral responsibility for killing civilians. Or refuse orders and face military consequences. There's no comfortable option. Behind Voss, more soldiers lower weapons. 5 now. Then 8. The formation is breaking. Voss sees it happening, spins to face his troops. "Raise your weapons," he shouts. "That's a direct order." The soldiers hesitate, caught between training and conscience. Then one speaks, voice shaking but clear. "Sir, these are civilians. Unarmed. We're being ordered to attack people who've committed no crime. Your orders are to enforce council decree." "The decree is unjust," another soldier says. "Everyone can see it." Voss's face reddens. "You will follow orders or face court-martial for insubordination." The soldiers exchange glances. Moral calculation happening in real time. Then something unprecedented occurs. Thomas Barrow steps forward from civilian ranks, walks slowly toward Voss. No one stops him. He reaches the captain, stands close enough to be killed easily, doesn't flinch. "I was an estate manager for 23 years, he says quietly. "Different followed noble orders without question. Watched communities suffer because aristocratic governance prioritizes privilege over effectiveness." He gestures toward the gathered civilians. "These networks work. They reduce suffering, increase stability, help people. The only reason nobles want them destroyed is because competence threatens their authority." Voss doesn't respond. Barrow continues, "You're being ordered to kill us for organizing better systems. If you follow that order, you're not protecting governance. You're protecting corruption." The silence that follows is absolute. Then Barrow does something that changes everything. He turns his back on Voss, walks slowly back to civilian ranks, completely exposed, completely vulnerable, a perfect target. Voss could order him killed, could use the insubordination as justification for broader violence. Instead, he stands frozen. Behind him, more soldiers lower weapons. 10, 15, 20. The formation is collapsing entirely. And Voss realizes he's lost control not through force, but through moral clarity. The civilians weren't arguing strategy. They were simply standing peacefully while forcing soldiers to see what they were being ordered to do. And humans, even soldiers trained to follow orders, have limits. Voss turns back to Alaric. His expression is complicated, anger mixing with something like respect. "You've made your point," he says quietly. "Have I? My soldiers won't attack. Not today, and tomorrow. That depends on the council's next orders." Alaric nods slowly. Then, "Tell the council something for me." "What?" "Tell them that systems built on competence don't need military enforcement. Only systems built on corruption require soldiers to maintain authority." "I'll deliver your message." Voss signals his troops. They begin withdrawing. Formation orderly but lacking earlier certainty. The civilians watch in stunned silence as 200 soldiers march away without engaging. Then someone starts crying, relief mixing with disbelief. Someone else starts laughing. Within seconds, the entire square erupts in chaotic celebration. "We did it!" Sarah shouts. They left. Alaric doesn't celebrate. Because this isn't victory. It's temporary reprieve. The council won't accept military refusal. They'll send different soldiers, ones less susceptible to moral pressure. Or they'll engineer a situation where violence is initiated by civilians, justifying retaliation. This confrontation isn't over. It's just beginning. Celine sees his expression, understands immediately. "How long do we have?" she asks quietly. "Days. Maybe weeks. Depends how quickly they can organize response. And when they come back, we do it again. Stand peacefully, force moral clarity. Eventually, they'll send soldiers who don't care about moral clarity." "I know." She takes his hand. "Then we find another way." "What way?" "I don't know. But we've come this far. We'll figure it out." Her confidence is either courage or denial. Alaric suspects both. That evening, messages begin arriving from other territories. News of the military standoff spread fast. Civilian networks refusing to fight. Soldiers refusing to attack. The whole confrontation witnessed by enough people that suppressing the story is impossible. The narrative is already forming. Aristocratic governance requiring military force to suppress peaceful coordination proves exactly what reformers have been saying about systemic corruption. It's devastating political ammunition. Within 3 days, 7 more territories request help establishing similar networks. Within a week, 15. The movement is spreading faster than anyone anticipated, and the nobility is panicking. Emergency council session convenes on day 8. Harrington looks like he's aged 20 years. Thorne's composure is completely shattered. They summon Captain Voss to explain the military failure. The captain stands before them in full uniform, weathered, professional, completely unrepentant. "Explain yourself," Harrington demands. "You were ordered to dissolve those networks by force. Instead, you withdrew without engaging." "My soldiers refused to attack unarmed civilians," Voss says flatly. "I could have ordered executions for insubordination, would have lost half my force through desertions, and created worse crisis. So you chose to disobey orders. I chose to prevent mutiny. There's a difference." Thorne leans forward. "Captain, do you understand what you've done? Your refusal has emboldened every reformist network across 5 territories. I understand that ordering soldiers to kill peaceful civilians is strategically and morally indefensible." Voss's voice is steel. "Those networks commit no violence, break no laws. Simply organize better than we do. That's not your determination to make. With respect, Counselor, it became my determination when you ordered me to attack people who weren't attacking anyone." The chamber falls silent. Because Voss has just articulated what everyone knows but no one says, the council's authority is built on coercion, not legitimacy. And coercion only works while people comply. "You're relieved of command," Harrington says finally. "Effective immediately." "Understood." Voss salutes with precise military formality. "Will there be anything else?" "Get out." Voss leaves without another word. The council sits in uncomfortable silence. Then someone speaks, a younger noble named Lord Garrett. "We need different approach," he says carefully. "Military force clearly won't work. We need to discredit the networks themselves." "How?" Thorne asks. "By targeting their architects. Make Alaric and Celine Ashford the problem. Criminals who manipulated civilians into a legal organization. They've committed no crimes. Then we create crimes, find violations, manufacture evidence if necessary. The silence that follows tastes like desperation, because that's where they are now, considering fabricated charges against people whose only offense is competence. That's dangerous precedent, someone says quietly. More dangerous than allowing parallel governance to undermine aristocratic authority? Garrett's voice is sharp. We either act decisively or watch our entire system collapse. Harrington looks around the chamber, sees nobles who built careers on inherited privilege facing extinction through effectiveness. What are you proposing specifically? He asks. Criminal charges against Alaric and Celine. Sedition. Unauthorized governance. Conspiracy to undermine legal authority. Based on what evidence? Based on whatever evidence we create. The honesty is staggering and revealing, because they're not even pretending anymore. Not claiming legal justification or moral authority, just naked preservation of power regardless of method. Thorne's voice cuts through. If we do this, we cross a line. Once we start fabricating charges, we admit our authority is built on corruption rather than legitimacy. We crossed that line years ago, Garrett says bluntly. We've just been pretending otherwise. Time to stop pretending. The vote takes 20 minutes, 13-2 in favor. Criminal charges will be filed. Evidence will be manufactured. Alaric and Celine will be arrested and tried under laws they didn't break for crimes they didn't commit. It's judicial murder disguised as legal process, and the council is unanimous that it's necessary. News of the criminal charges reaches Alaric 4 days later. He's in the village hall reviewing expansion plans when Marcus arrives. The old steward looks physically ill. Sir, he says quietly, the council has filed sedition charges against you and Lady Ashford. On what grounds? Unauthorized governance, conspiracy to undermine legal authority, criminal organization, all fabricated. Yes. Alaric sets down the documents. When? Arrest warrants issued this morning. Military enforcement authorized. They're coming for you. How long? Days, maybe hours. Celine enters mid-conversation. Here's enough to understand. So they couldn't beat us through force, she says. Now they're trying legal manipulation. Essentially. She looks at Alaric. What do we do? We have 3 options. First, run. Disappear into territories where council authority is weak. That abandons everyone who trusted us. Yes. Second option, surrender, face trial. Hope public opinion protects us. That's naive. They'll execute us regardless. Probably. Third option, resist, refuse arrest, force them to take us by violence, which proves we're criminals. Or proves they're tyrants, depends on narrative. Celine is quiet for a long moment. Then, there's a fourth option. Alaric looks at her. What? We turn ourselves in. Publicly. With full documentation of everything we've built. Make the trial about systems rather than people. That's suicide. Maybe. But it's strategic suicide. She's thinking rapidly now. If we surrender with complete transparency, every village we've coordinated, every system we've implemented, every improvement we've generated, the trial becomes referendum on aristocratic governance itself. They'll suppress the documentation. Not if we distribute it first, to every village, every territory. Make it impossible to suppress. Alaric sees where she's going. You want to use our trial as platform for exposing systemic corruption. I want to use it as proof that better governance is possible. That the only reason nobles oppose our networks is because competence threatens their authority. It won't save us. No. But it might save what we've built. The silence that follows is heavy with implication, because Celine is proposing genuine martyrdom, not defensive last stand, deliberate sacrifice to preserve principles. It's either brilliant or insane. Alaric suspects both. Marcus speaks quietly. Sir, if you do this, the council will make examples of you. Public execution, maximum brutality. I know. And you're considering it anyway. Yes. Why? Because effectiveness without sacrifice is just comfortable theory. Real change requires people willing to die for it. The conviction in his voice is absolute. Marcus stands in silence. Then he bows, deeper than required. It's been an honor serving you, he says, even after you stopped being Duke. Thank you, Marcus. The old steward leaves. Alaric and Celine stand alone. Are you sure about this? He asks quietly. No, but I'm committed anyway. We're going to die. Probably. You're okay with that. Celine takes both his hands, looks directly into his eyes. 3 years ago, I was operating illegal charity networks while hiding from aristocratic oversight, living in constant fear, accomplishing things but never acknowledged. Then you saw what I built, recognized it, defended it, made me believe competence deserved recognition regardless of traditional authority. She squeezes his hands. You changed my life, made me want better systems, want honest governance, want to build something that actually helps people. Her voice strengthens. If dying preserves that, if our execution proves aristocratic governance is built on violence rather than legitimacy, if it inspires other people to keep building better systems, then yes, I'm okay with it. The acceptance in her voice is terrifying and beautiful. Alaric pulls her close, holds her tight enough to hurt. I love you, he says roughly. I know. She's crying now. I love you too. They stand like that for a long time. Two people holding each other knowing these might be their final days. Finally, Alaric pulls back, wipes tears from her face. Then let's do it right, he says. Full documentation, public surrender, complete transparency. Maximum impact. Maximum impact. They spend the next 2 days compiling everything. 3 years of network coordination. Village by village documentation. Economic data proving their systems work better than aristocratic governance. Testimony from administrators and civilians. All of it organized, all of it copied, all of it distributed to 47 villages with instructions to preserve and share. By the time arrest warrants are enforced, the information is beyond suppression. The soldiers arrive at dawn on the 3rd day. Different company, different commander. These ones look harder, less susceptible to moral persuasion. They surround the village, announce arrest warrants for Alaric and Celine Ashford. Alaric and Celine walk out to meet them, hands visible, unarmed, completely cooperative. The commander, a woman named Captain Drake, seems almost disappointed by the lack of resistance. Utz, you're surrendering, she says flatly. We're complying with legal process, Alaric corrects, while maintaining that the charges are fabricated and the prosecution is political persecution. That's for the court to determine. Indeed, Drake's soldiers bind their hands, not gently, making a point. The villagers watch in silence, some crying, some angry. Sarah pushes to the front, shouts, "They committed no crimes. This is tyranny." Drake ignores her, signals her troops to move out. As they're led away, Alaric looks back one final time, sees the village they helped coordinate, the systems they built, the people they served, sees Thomas Barrow standing firm, Sarah beside him. 300 people who believed competence mattered more than authority, sees proof that better is possible even when better gets you killed. The journey to Dunmere Hall takes 6 hours. They're locked in separate cells upon arrival. Not together. The council's final cruelty. Alaric sits in darkness, listening to his own breathing, thinking about the trial to come, the execution that will follow, thinking about whether sacrifice actually changes anything or if systems always win, thinking about Celine locked somewhere nearby facing identical thoughts. The door opens. Harrington enters, alone. He looks at Alaric with something complicated. Not quite pity, not quite respect. "You could have run," he says quietly. "Yes." "You could have fought." "Yes." "Instead, you surrender and make us into villains for arresting you. You are villains. I'm just making it visible." Harrington sits heavily. "Do you understand what you've done? The documentation you distributed, the narrative you've created. Win or lose in court, you've damaged aristocratic authority permanently. Good. That's not governance, that's destruction." "No." Alaric's voice is steady. "Destruction would have been violent rebellion, military conflict. What I've done is exposed systemic corruption through peaceful resistance, shown people that better systems exist, and gotten yourself killed in the process. Probably. Was it worth it? Ask me after I'm dead." Harrington is quiet for a long moment. Then, "I came to offer compromise." "What compromise?" "Plead guilty. Accept exile instead of execution. The council will allow you and Lady Ashford to leave territories permanently. In exchange for what? Public recantation. Admission that your networks were illegal and your resistance was wrong. So we save our lives by destroying everything we've built, essentially." Alaric laughs. It's a harsh sound. "You really don't understand at all." "Understand what? Why we're doing this? It's not about us. It's about proving better systems are possible. If we recant, we invalidate 3 years of work. Suggest that aristocratic governance was right all along. But you'd live. What's the point of living if it requires betraying everything that made life meaningful? Harrington stares at him. You've changed. The Duke I knew 3 years ago would have taken any deal that preserved his life. The Duke you knew 3 years ago was a monster who justified atrocities through arithmetic. I'm trying very hard not to be him anymore. By dying for principles. By living for them as long as possible. Then dying for them if necessary. Harrington stands, shakes his head slowly. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Maybe both. The trial is set for 3 days from now. Public. Maximum visibility. The council wants to make an example. Then they'll get one. Just not the example they're expecting. Harrington leaves without another word. The door locks. Alaric sits in darkness knowing he has 3 days left. 3 days to live. 3 days to wonder if sacrifice actually matters. 3 days to hope Celine is as ready for this as she claimed. Somewhere in another cell, Celine sits thinking identical thoughts. Tomorrow they'll be allowed to see each other. Tomorrow they'll face whatever comes next together. But tonight they're alone with consequences of choosing integrity over survival, and the terrible uncertainty of whether that choice was courage or delusion. Outside Dunmere Hall, in 47 villages across 5 territories, people are reading documentation, seeing proof that better systems existed, learning that 2 people chose death over compromise, understanding that the council had to fabricate charges and enforce them violently because they couldn't compete through effectiveness. The narrative is spreading, the movement is growing, and somewhere in the darkness, revolution is being born not through violence, but through the terrible clarity of watching good people choose principles over survival. The trial begins in 3 days. The execution will follow shortly after. And the world is about to learn whether systems built on integrity can survive contact with power built on corruption. The cell is cold in ways that have nothing to do with temperature. Alaric sits in darkness counting heartbeats, because counting gives the illusion of control. 72 beats per minute, 4,320 per hour, 103,680 per day. He has 3 days left, maybe less. That's roughly 311,000 heartbeats before execution. The arithmetic is oddly comforting. Reducing death to numbers makes it feel manageable, even when it's absolutely not. This is what power does to a mind. Teaches you to calculate everything, even your own extinction. The door opens without warning. Guards enter. 4 of them, more than necessary for 1 unarmed prisoner. They're taking precautions against the man he used to be. The Duke who commanded armies and crushed opposition through strategic ruthlessness. They don't understand he's not that person anymore. Or maybe they do, and that's what terrifies them. A man who used to wield absolute authority and voluntarily surrendered it is more dangerous than any tyrant, because you can't predict someone who values principles over survival. You're being moved, one guard says. No explanation, just command. Alaric stands without resistance, lets them bind his hands, lead him through corridors he once walked as absolute authority. Dunmere Hall feels different from this perspective. Smaller, less imposing, just stone and architecture. The power he'd felt here was never the building. It was the belief system surrounding it. And belief systems are fragile things. They collapse the moment people stop believing. They bring him to a different cell, larger, with 2 occupants already present. Celine. She's sitting against the far wall looking exhausted but unbroken. When she sees him, her entire expression transforms. Relief and grief mixing into something too complicated for single emotion. The guards remove Alaric's bindings, lock the door, leave them alone. For a long moment, they just stare at each other. Then Celine crosses the space between them, doesn't speak, just wraps her arms around him and holds on like she's trying to prevent him from disappearing. Alaric holds her back with the same desperate intensity. I thought they'd keep us separated until trial, she says against his chest. So did I. Why the change? Maybe cruelty has diminishing returns, or maybe Harrington has more conscience than I gave him credit for. She pulls back enough to see his face. How are you? Terrified. You? Same. They sit against the wall, shoulders touching, drawing comfort from physical contact. Have you been thinking about it? Celine asked quietly. The execution. Constantly. And I keep trying to find the calculation that makes it acceptable. The arithmetic that balances dying at 43 against living to old age. Can't find it, because there isn't one. No. Death is the one thing that doesn't reduce to mathematics. Celine is quiet for a moment, then, do you regret it? Any of it? Alaric considers the question honestly. Thinks about 15 years as Duke. 3 years building networks. The choice to stand peacefully instead of fight violently. The decision to surrender rather than run. No, he says finally. I regret who I was, not who I became, even knowing it ends like this. Especially knowing it ends like this. Because at least I'm dying for something real instead of living for something hollow. That's very philosophical for a man facing execution in 3 days. Philosophy is all I have left. She takes his hand, laces her fingers through his. You have me. Yes, and somehow that makes dying both easier and infinitely harder. They sit in silence. Outside the cell, Dunmere Hall continues its routines. Servants working, nobles plotting, the machinery of power grinding forward regardless of individual fate. That's the terrible truth about systems. They outlive the people who create them, outlive the people who resist them, just continue existing through momentum and institutional inertia, unless someone breaks the momentum. The trial begins the next morning. They're brought to the Grand Hall in chains. Theatrical cruelty designed to emphasize their powerlessness. The chamber is packed. Every noble from 5 territories, hundreds of civilians, guards lining the walls, maximum visibility, maximum spectacle. The council wants this to be lesson, demonstration of what happens to people who challenge aristocratic authority. They're about to learn demonstrations can backfire. Lord Harrington presides. He looks uncomfortable in the role. This isn't governance he's conducting. It's execution with legal pretense. The charges are read aloud. Sedition, unauthorized governance, conspiracy to undermine legal authority. Criminal organization, each one fabricated, each one designed to justify predetermined conclusion. How do you plead? Harrington asks. Alaric stands, chains rattling, voice steady, not guilty. These charges are political persecution disguised as legal process. Every action we took was peaceful, legal, and served to help communities function better than aristocratic governance. The chamber murmurs. Harrington signals for silence. You organize parallel governance structures without noble authorization. We organized coordination networks, not governance. Communities chose to participate voluntarily, without council approval. Since when does helping people require aristocratic permission? Since always. That's how civilized society functions. Alaric's laugh is bitter. Civilized society. Is that what you call a system that requires fabricated charges and military force to suppress peaceful coordination? The murmuring grows louder. Lady Thorne leans forward. Your Grace, Just Alaric. I abdicated. Remember. Thorne's jaw tightens. Alaric. Your networks undermined established governance, created instability, threatened social order. Our networks reduced crime, increased economic output, and improved civilian quality of life. If that threatens your social order, perhaps your order deserves threatening. The chamber erupts. Nobles shouting, civilians arguing, guards moving to restore order. And Alaric realizes something fundamental. This trial isn't about proving guilt. It's about who controls the narrative. The council thinks theatrical prosecution will intimidate resistance. What they're actually doing is providing platform for everything they've tried to suppress. Order, Harrington shouts. Order in this chamber. The noise subsides gradually. Harrington looks at Alaric with something like warning. You're not helping your case. I'm not trying to help my case. I'm trying to expose yours. Meaning this trial is admission of failure. If aristocratic governance was effective, you wouldn't need fabricated charges to suppress peaceful coordination. The fact that you're prosecuting us proves everything we've been saying. The silence that follows is absolute, because Alaric just articulated what everyone knows but no one says. The trial itself is evidence of systemic corruption. Thorne recovers first. We're not on trial here. You are. No. Alaric's voice carries to every corner of the chamber. We're all on trial. You for maintaining corrupt systems, me for challenging them, and everyone watching for deciding which side of that line they stand on. He turns to face the crowd. 3 years ago, I was Duke of this territory. Absolute authority, unquestioned power, and I was miserable. Because authority built on coercion rather than effectiveness is hollow. It requires constant maintenance through fear and suppression. He pauses. Then I met someone who showed me different was possible, who built systems that actually worked, who proved competence matters more than inherited privilege. His eyes find Celine in the crowd. She's standing in chains, but her composure is unshaken. We've spent 3 years building networks that help communities. Not through force, not through authority, through coordination and competence. And the only reason we're on trial is because we've proven aristocratic governance is unnecessary. Guards move toward him. Harrington signals them to stop. Because something is happening in the chamber, something the council didn't anticipate. Civilians are nodding. Even some nobles look uncertain. The narrative is shifting in real time. You want to execute us, Alaric continues. Fine, but understand what you're executing. Not criminals, not rebels. Just two people who believed better systems were possible and proved it. He looks directly at Harrington. Kill us if you must. But you can't kill what we've built. Can't suppress knowledge that better exists. 47 villages have seen functional governance. Thousands of people know competence outperforms corruption. His voice strengthens. Execute us, and you prove we were right. Prove that aristocratic authority requires violence to maintain itself. Prove that the entire system is built on coercion rather than legitimacy. The chamber is completely silent now. Every person present understanding they're witnessing something unprecedented. Not a trial, a reckoning. Harrington stands slowly. I think we've heard enough. Have you? Because I'm just getting started. You'll have opportunity to present formal defense when there is no formal defense. Alaric cuts through. This isn't legitimate legal process. It's political execution with theatrical pretense. So let's stop pretending. He turns back to the crowd. Every person in this chamber knows these charges are fabricated, knows we committed no crimes except competence, knows the council is prosecuting us because we threatened their authority by being effective. He pauses. Lets the words settle. The question you all need to ask yourselves is this. Do you want to live in a society where helping people is criminal? Where coordination requires aristocratic permission? Where better systems are suppressed through violence? Silence. Then someone in the civilian section stands. It's Thomas Barrow. I was a state manager for 23 years, he says clearly. Followed noble orders without question. Then I saw what these two people built. Systems that actually worked. Governance that actually helped. His voice carries conviction. They're on trial for competence. For proving better is possible. If we allow that prosecution, we're saying effectiveness is crime and corruption is law. Another person stands. Sarah from the village. Lady Ashford coordinated our community through 3 winters that would have devastated us under noble governance. She saved lives, improved quality of existence, asked nothing in return. More people stand, one by one. Civilians from coordinated villages. They helped us. They built systems that worked. They committed no crime except caring. The chamber is filling with testimonial, spontaneous, uncoordinated, genuine. And the council is losing control of the narrative completely. Harrington signals guards. Silence these disruptions. The guards move forward, uncertainty in their movements, because they're being ordered to suppress testimony supporting peaceful coordinators. The moral optics are devastating. Then something unprecedented happens. One guard lowers his weapon, steps back. I won't suppress this, he says clearly. Another guard follows, then 3 more. Within seconds, half the guards have refused orders. The chamber descends into chaos. Nobles shouting commands, guards refusing, civilians emboldened. The entire hierarchical structure collapsing in real time. And Alaric watches with something like wonder. Because this is what revolution looks like. Not violence, not dramatic uprising. Just systematic refusal to maintain corrupt systems. Just people collectively deciding better is possible and acting accordingly. Harrington is shouting for order, but no one is listening. Thorne has gone pale. She understands what's happening. The trial was supposed to intimidate resistance. Instead, it's catalyzing movement. The more they suppress, the more they prove corruption. The more they prosecute competence, the more they reveal their own inadequacy. It's a perfect trap. And they walked into it voluntarily. The chaos continues for 20 minutes before Harrington finally restores minimal order. But the damage is done. The trial has become referendum on governance itself. An aristocratic authority is losing catastrophically. Harrington looks at Alaric with something complicated, anger mixing with exhausted recognition. "You planned this," he says quietly. "No. I just told the truth and let consequences unfold. You've destroyed any pretense of legitimate authority. You destroyed that yourself by requiring fabricated charges to suppress peaceful coordination. I just made it visible." The chamber is settling into tense silence, everyone waiting to see what happens next. Harrington confers with other council members. Urgent whispered conversation. Finally, he turns back. "This trial is suspended pending council deliberation," he announces. "The accused will be returned to holding." Guards, the ones still following orders, move to escort Alaric and Celine out. As they're led away, civilians start chanting. "No crime, incompetence. Better systems are possible. Release them." The chanting follows them down corridors, echoes through stone halls. And for the first time since arrest, Alaric feels something like hope. Their return to shared cell, alone again. Chains removed, Celine is shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline and suppressed emotion. "That was insane," she says. "That was necessary. You turned the trial into demonstration of exactly what you've been saying. We turned it. You stood there in chains maintaining composure while I spoke. That mattered." She sits heavily. What happens now? They deliberate. Probably realize executing us makes us martyrs and legitimizes everything we've said. So they release us? Or they execute us quietly? Make us disappear. Claim we escaped or died resisting arrest. That's worse than public execution. Yes, but it's strategically smarter. Celine looks at him. "You really think they'd do that?" "I think they're desperate. And desperate authority does terrible things." They sit in silence. Hours pass. No word. No updates. Just waiting in uncertainty worse than any verdict. Finally, near midnight, the door opens. Harrington enters alone. No guards. No witnesses. Just one exhausted nobleman facing consequences of systematic failure. He looks at them for a long moment. "The council has reached decision," he says quietly. Alaric stands, Celine beside him, both ready for whatever comes. "And we're releasing you. All charges dropped. Immediate freedom." The words don't quite register. Alaric stares. "Explain." "We can't prosecute you. The trial demonstrated that conclusively. Every action we take to suppress your networks proves your arguments about corruption." He pauses. "You've won. Not through force, through moral clarity, by making us show exactly who we are." There's no triumph in his voice, just exhausted recognition. "What about the networks?" Celine asks carefully. "Continue operating. We won't interfere." Why the sudden reversal? Because 16 nobles have withdrawn from council, citing irreconcilable differences with prosecution of peaceful coordination. Because half our military forces are refusing orders. Because continuing this fight destroys what little legitimacy we have left. Harrington meets Alaric's eyes. "You were right. About everything, our governance is corrupt. Our authority is built on coercion. Our systems fail people in service of maintaining privilege. So, what now? Now we adapt or become irrelevant. Those are the only options. The silence that follows is complicated, because this isn't victory through conquest. It's victory through systematic exposure of systemic failure, the most dangerous kind, the kind that can't be reversed. You're free to leave," Harrington says. "Immediately, no conditions. And if we refuse," he almost laughs. "Why would you refuse freedom?" "Because leaving implies this is resolved. It's not. Systems don't change because one trial went badly. What are you suggesting?" Alaric looks at Celine, Xia, and Simon. She nods slightly. "We want formal recognition of coordination networks as legitimate governance structures, legal framework that allows communities to organize outside aristocratic oversight while remaining within territorial law. That's revolutionary. That's necessary. The alternative is continued conflict as more communities adopt our models. Better to formalize cooperation than force permanent opposition." Harrington is quiet for a long time. Then, "I'll present it to what remains of the council. Can't guarantee acceptance. Present it as inevitable rather than optional. Frame it as adaptation rather than surrender. You're teaching me how to manage my own political crisis. I'm teaching you how to recognize when systems need fundamental change versus cosmetic reform." Harrington nods slowly. I'll do what I can. He turns toward the door, pauses. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. For the charges. The prosecution. All of it. Are you sorry for the corruption that made it necessary? Yes. Though I'm not sure how to fix that. Start by admitting it, publicly. Acknowledgement is the first step toward actual change. Harrington leaves without responding. The door remains unlocked. Alaric and Celine stand in the cell that's no longer a cell. Free but uncertain what freedom means in this context. We should leave, Celine says, before they change their minds. Where do we go? Back to the villages, back to the work. Just like that. Prison to coordination in one evening. She takes his hand. What else is there? They walk out of Dunmere Hall as dawn breaks. No escort, no ceremony, just two people leaving a place that no longer has authority over them. The morning is cold and clear, the kind of dawn that feels like fresh start even when you know better. Outside the gates, people are waiting, hundreds of them. Civilians from coordinated villages, administrators, even some nobles who'd withdrawn from council, all gathered at dawn, waiting. When Alaric and Celine emerge, silence falls. Then someone starts clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire crowd is applauding. Not dramatically, not performatively, just genuine appreciation for two people who chose principles over survival. Alaric feels tears on his face, doesn't bother hiding them. Celine is crying too. Relief and exhaustion and something like joy all mixing into overwhelming emotion. They walk through the crowd, people touching their shoulders, offering quiet thanks. No speeches, no grand gestures, just human connection. Thomas Barrow meets them at the edge of the crowd. The villages are ready to continue coordination whenever you are, he says simply. We're ready now, just like that. No recovery period, no rest. Work is the only thing that makes sense anymore. They travel back to the first village, the one where they'd started 3 years ago, where Sarah had hired them as coordinators despite knowing who they'd been. The village hasn't changed, same buildings, same people, same systems functioning quietly. But something feels different. Not the place, them. Alaric realizes he's finally free of the weight he's carried since becoming Duke at 28. The constant pressure of authority, the ruthless calculations, the accumulated guilt of 15 years treating people as arithmetic. It's gone. Not forgotten, not erased, but no longer defining him. He's just Alaric now, coordinator, builder, human being trying to help systems function better. It's enough. That night, in the small room above the village hall, Celine finds him staring out the window. Can't sleep, she asks. Don't want to. Want to remember this feeling. What feeling? Free, purposeful, human. She joins him at the window, wraps arms around him from behind. We did it, she says quietly. Built something better without becoming monsters. We survived, he corrects. Did and survived are different things. Fair distinction. They're quiet for a moment. Then Alaric says, thank you. For what? For seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For believing I could be better than I was. For standing beside me through everything. Celine turns him to face her. You did the same for me. Recognized competence when everyone else saw interference. Made me believe effectiveness deserved recognition. She pauses. We saved each other. Yes. She kisses him. Slow and deliberate. Like they have all the time in the world. When they separate, both smiling, Celine says, so what now? Now we build. One village at a time, one system at a time, until better becomes normal instead of revolutionary. That'll take years, probably decades. And you're okay with that. Slow work, no authority, no dramatic transformation. I'm better than okay. I finally understand that real change is slow, that effectiveness compounds gradually, that sustainable systems require patient construction. He pulls her close. I spent 15 years trying to control everything through authority. Turns out the only thing worth controlling is yourself. That's very wise for someone who was almost executed 2 days ago. Wisdom comes from surviving your own stupidity. She laughs. It's a real laugh. Unguarded. They spend the night holding each other. Not desperately, just present with each other. The trial is over. The networks continue. Life moves forward. And two people who started as political maneuvering have become something neither planned. Genuine partners building something better than either could create alone. 3 months later, Formal framework is established. Coordination networks recognized as legitimate community organization. Operating parallel to noble governance but independent of it. It's not perfect. Tensions remain. Some nobles resist, some communities struggle, but it's functional. And functionality is the foundation everything else builds on. Alaric and Celine expand gradually. 7 new villages in first month, 12 more in second, 20 by month 3. Not through conquest, through demonstration that better systems are possible. The work is endless, exhausting, sometimes frustrating, and absolutely meaningful in ways authority never was. 6 months after the trial, Harrington requests meeting. They meet in neutral territory. Same tavern where they'd met during the network's early expansion. Harrington looks different, less rigid, more human. I wanted to update you, he says. The Council has formally adopted transparency protocols. All governance decisions now require public documentation. All noble finances subject to quarterly review. That's significant progress. It's humiliating, Harrington says bluntly, having our corruption exposed systematically. But it's also necessary. You prove that. I proved effectiveness outperforms privilege. The rest was consequence. Harrington is quiet for a moment, then, I've been thinking about what you said, about systems outliving the people who create them. And I've spent 40 years maintaining corrupt systems because that's what I inherited. Never questioned whether they should exist, just whether I could succeed within them. He meets Alaric's eyes. You questioned the entire foundation, asked if systems serve people or people serve systems, and you had courage to restructure based on honest answer. That wasn't courage, that was desperation. I couldn't live with what authority had made me become. Maybe that's what courage is. Not absence of fear, but inability to accept corruption anymore. The conversation continues for an hour. Not political negotiation, just honest discussion between two men on opposite sides of systematic change. When they part, Harrington offers hand. Alaric shakes it. No ceremony. No. Just acknowledgement that opposition doesn't require hatred. That night, Celine asks, do you think he meant it? The change. I think he's trying. Whether he succeeds is a different question. And if he fails, then someone else will try. Change happens through accumulated attempts, not single transformation. She's quiet for a moment. Then, are you happy? The question surprises him. Alaric considers it honestly. Thinks about 15 years as Duke, 3 years building networks, 6 months since trial. All of it accumulated into this moment, sitting in small room above village hall with woman he loves and work that matters. Yes, he says finally, not satisfied, not comfortable, but genuinely happy in ways I never was with absolute authority. Good. Me too. They sit in comfortable silence. Outside, the village settles into evening routine. Systems functioning, people living. Networks coordinating quietly. Not perfect, never perfect, but functional, and getting better incrementally. The revolution continues, not through violence, not through dramatic uprising, just through steady demonstration that competence outperforms corruption. One village at a time, one system at a time, one human decision at a time. 2 years after the trial, the networks coordinate 147 villages across 12 territories. Aristocratic governance continues, but reformed, transparent, accountable. The transformation isn't complete. Probably never will be. But it's directionally correct, moving towards systems that serve people rather than privilege. And that's all any sustainable change can be. Directional, incremental, persistent. Alaric is 45 now, Celine 42. Both showing physical wear from constant work, gray hair, permanent exhaustion, bodies that protest 18-hour days. But their minds are clear, their purpose unshaken, their partnership stronger than any political alliance. One evening, coordinating winter supply routes, Celine says, we should write this down. Write what down? Everything. The restructuring, the trial, the networks, all of it. So people understand how systemic change actually happens. You want to document revolution. I want to document the truth. That change isn't dramatic transformation. It's accumulated decisions by people who can't accept corruption anymore. Who would read it? People who inherit systems they didn't create and wonder if different is possible. Alaric considers it. Then, all right, we'll document it, honestly. including our failures, our compromises, everything we got wrong, especially what we got wrong. That's the only way others learn. They spend the next year compiling documentation. Not propaganda, not self-justification, just honest account of what worked, what failed, what cost more than anticipated. They call it simply networks. A record of systematic change through persistent competence. It's not inspirational, it's practical, technical, sometimes boring, and absolutely valuable to anyone trying to build better systems. The document spreads gradually, not through dramatic publication, just copied village to village, territory to territory. Within 5 years, it's referenced across 20 territories. Within 10, it's foundational text for anyone attempting governance reform. Not because it's revolutionary, because it's honest about how hard real change actually is. Alaric is 53 when the formal recognition comes. Multiple territories request his counsel on governance restructuring. Not as Duke, as coordinator with proven track record. It's strange returning to advisory role, but different from authority. He can suggest, can teach, can refuse when recommendations conflict with principles, can remain human while helping systems function better. Celine is 50 when she's invited to present network models to International Governance Assembly. She declines. Too much like performance, she explains to Alaric. I'd rather keep building than start explaining. You could do both. Could. But building matters more. They remain in villages, coordinating, teaching, adapting systems as communities evolve. The work never ends. Systems require constant maintenance, but it's meaningful maintenance, purpose-driven rather than power-driven. And that distinction makes everything sustainable. Alaric is 62 when his body finally forces retirement. Not dramatic, just accumulated exhaustion from 34 years of governance. 15 is Duke. 19 coordinating networks. He can barely walk some mornings. His mind remains sharp, but his body betrays him. Celine is 59, still working 18-hour days, still coordinating, still building, but she slows down, spends more time with him. Because partnership matters more than productivity. They moved a small cottage in the first village they'd coordinated, the one where Sarah had hired them decades ago. Sarah is 74 now, retired, but still sharp. You two built something remarkable, she tells them one evening. Changed how entire region thinks about governance. We built something functional, Alaric corrects. Remarkable is overstating it. From where I'm sitting, functional is remarkable. Most systems barely achieve that. The networks continue without them. Operating independently, evolving, improving, exactly as sustainable systems should. Alaric is 68 when he finally writes the personal account, not the technical documentation. The internal journey. What it felt like to go from Duke wielding absolute authority to coordinator with no power except competence. What it cost. What it taught. What it changed. He calls it On Becoming Human. Reflections from someone who forgot how. It's shorter than the technical documentation. More vulnerable. Completely honest about failures and compromises. Celine reads it first, cries through several sections. This is the most honest thing you've ever written, she says. It's the only thing I have left to offer. Experience of someone who got it catastrophically wrong and spent decades trying to get it right. The personal account spreads differently than technical documentation, not through governance networks, through personal sharing. People reading it to understand their own struggles with authority and humanity. It becomes unexpected success. Not because it's inspirational, because it's honest about how hard maintaining principles actually is. Alaric is 73 when Celine dies. Heart failure. Quick. She's coordinating morning schedules and just stops. Gone in seconds. No prolonged suffering. No drawn-out goodbyes. It should be mercy. Feels like robbery. The funeral is attended by thousands. People whose lives were improved by systems she built. Communities she coordinated. Villages she helped. But Alaric barely registers them. He's lost the person who made him want to be better, who stood beside him through everything, who chose him when he was monster and stayed when he became human. The grief is overwhelming. For 6 months he can barely function, just exists, going through routines without purpose. Then slowly, very slowly, he returns to work. Not coordination. He's too old for 18-hour days. But teaching, sharing what they learned, helping younger coordinators avoid mistakes he and Celine made. It's not replacement. Nothing replaces her. But it's purpose. And purpose is what keeps humans functional when everything else fails. Alaric is 78 when he writes the final section. Not documentation, not personal reflection, just letter to anyone reading this decades or centuries later. It says, I was Duke at 28, absolute authority, commanded armies, controlled territories, made decisions that shaped thousands of lives. And I was miserable, because authority without accountability is prison. Power without purpose is burden. I met someone who showed me different was possible, who proved competence matters more than inherited privilege, who built systems that actually helped people. We spent decades building networks, faced execution for competence, survived through moral clarity rather than force, and eventually changed how entire region thinks about governance. Not through revolution, through persistent demonstration that better is possible. The lesson isn't dramatic, it's practical. Systems change when enough people refuse to maintain corruption, when individuals choose integrity over comfort, when human connection outweighs institutional authority. Change is slow, frustrating, sometimes heartbreaking. But it's also the only thing that actually matters. Build better systems, stand for principles, choose humanity over power. The rest is just consequence. Alaric dies at 79, peacefully, in small cottage in the village where it all began. Sarah, now 91, finds him in mourning, sitting in chair by window overlooking territories he once governed and later served. Expression peaceful, finally at rest. The funeral is smaller than Celine's, but no less meaningful. Communities gathering to acknowledge man who proved authority isn't same as leadership. That real power is making yourself unnecessary by building systems that function without you. Thomas Barrow, now 76, gives eulogy. He says, Alaric was Duke for 15 years, coordinator for 19, teacher for 25. He'll be remembered for the last 2. For showing us that sustainable change comes from competence and persistence, not authority and force. For proving that becoming human is harder and more valuable than remaining powerful. For building something better, and having courage to step away when it could function without him. The networks continue. 147 villages when he died. 236 within 5 years. 412 within 20. Not because one person built them, because sustainable systems propagate themselves. The documentation remains foundational text for governance reform across multiple regions. The personal reflections become required reading for anyone entering public service. And the lesson that competence outperforms corruption when given patient opportunity becomes accepted wisdom. Not revolutionary anymore, just obvious. Which means it worked. 50 years after Alaric's death, Scholar compiles comprehensive history of the networks. She interviews hundreds of people, reviews decades of documentation, studies the systematic transformation of how 12 territories think about governance. Her conclusion is simple. 2 people proved better was possible. Thousands of people chose to build it, and gradually, incrementally, persistently, systems changed. Not through violence, not through uprising, through accumulated human decisions to value effectiveness over authority. The revolution wasn't dramatic. That's why it succeeded. The documentation ends with final observation. Power built on coercion requires constant maintenance through fear and suppression. It's exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Power built on competence requires only demonstration and patient propagation. It's slow, but ultimately inevitable. Alaric and Celine understood this, built accordingly, and changed how we think about governance itself, not through what they controlled, through what they built and released. That's the lesson. Build better, let it propagate, trust that competence compounds. The rest is just being human long enough to see it work. 100 years after the trial, the networks coordinate over 3,000 communities across 40 territories. Aristocratic governance still exists. Reformed, accountable, transparent, operating parallel to coordination networks, sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing, but always accountable to people they serve rather than privileges they inherit. The transformation is complete in some ways, ongoing in others. Systems never stop evolving. That's what makes them alive. And somewhere in village archives, carefully preserved, sit 2 documents, networks, a record of systematic change through persistent competence, and on becoming human, reflections from someone who forgot how. Read by students, referenced by coordinators, studied by anyone trying to build better systems. Not because they're revolutionary, because they're honest about how hard real change is and why it's worth attempting anyway. The names Alaric and Celine become synonymous with systematic reform, with choosing integrity over authority, with building better even when better gets you killed. Their story isn't inspirational in traditional sense. No dramatic battles, no heroic sacrifices. Just two people persistently building functional systems while refusing to become monsters in the process. And that persistence, that refusal to compromise principles even when compromise was easier, that's what changed everything. Not immediately, not dramatically, but completely. The way real change always happens. One decision at a time, one system at a time, one human choosing better at a time, until better becomes normal, and the old corruption is historical curiosity. People study to understand what doesn't work. That's the legacy. Not power, not authority, not dramatic revolution, just proof that competence and integrity compound into transformation when given patient persistence. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. The story ends where it began, in Village Square where two people once stood peacefully against military force. There's memorial now. Simple stone. No dramatic statue. Just inscription. Here stood people who proved better was possible, and had courage to build it honestly. That's all. No names, no dates, no elaborate praise. Because the lesson isn't about individuals. It's about choice. The choice to value competence over corruption, integrity over authority, humanity over power. That choice is available to everyone, every day, in every system. Most people don't take it. Comfort is easier, conformity is safer, corruption is familiar. But some people choose better anyway. Build functional systems, stand for principles, refuse to become what they're fighting, and gradually, incrementally, persistently, the world changes. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but directionally towards systems that serve people rather than exploit them. That's the story. That's the lesson. That's the legacy. Two people proved it was possible. Thousands chose to continue. Millions benefited. And the revolution, quiet, persistent, unglamorous, succeeded. Not through violence, through competence, through choosing humanity over authority every single day until humanity became the system instead of the exception. That's enough. That's everything. That's the resolution. The rest is just living honestly, building carefully, and trusting that better compounds when given time and persistence.